Chapter 588. In fact, Soldier's Assault had already been completed. However, due to Chen Fengchen's influence, it was not broadcast in a hurry. Instead, it was scheduled for January of next year, becoming a spring drama on Central TV. Chen Fengchen was not idle either. In addition to promoting the show according to plan, he also set up the Drawing Sword crew without stopping to rest. He was preparing to shoot the new show. Although there was plenty of time for Yang Yi to produce the opening song or theme song for Soldier's Assault, unlike other songs, Yang Yi had delayed the opening song for too long. For the entire October, he was like a sponge, desperately absorbing knowledge from the old professors at the Jiangchuan Classical Music Academy. He did not write a single note. In November, he finally began to write. The main framework of the song was easy to write, but it was just a sloppy first draft. It was only a piano piece. Although it sounded decent, it was not enough to shock people. Even so, Yang Yi's homework had already shocked several professors in the composition department. Even though it was just a draft, it was not difficult to see that the overall musical framework was magnificent and majestic. It was not a random piece that a rookie student messed around with to cope with a learning task. For that, several professors who were good at different instruments personally brought Yang Yi to the instrument room. For example, the famous organist Professor Wu Dan and Professor Su Yi, who knew both the cello and the accordion. They personally came down to help Yang Yi with the audition and helped him enrich the details of the song. You mentioned a vocal ensemble just now. You can consider using our school's choir, or I can help you contact our city's choir. They're one of the top choirs in the country, and they've even performed abroad. The deputy dean, Pang Buodong, was shocked. He was very interested in the song Yang Yi was going to create. Of course, he was not trying to steal Yang Yi's creative rights. In this world, it was not that easy to steal someone's copyright. The most important thing was that from his professional perspective, Yang Yi's song would be an amazing masterpiece. Although it was still very rough, the framework alone was enough to make people feel that it was not simple. If Yang Yi composed an excellent or even classic piece of music in their school of classical music, the school of classical music would be proud of him. Even those who helped Yang Yi would leave a strong mark in history. Yang Yi, I can't wait to hear your finished song. When Yang Yi added the elements of the drum and other percussion instruments, Pang Buodong, who was an expert in membrane instruments, could not help but sigh emotionally when he heard the prelude. Of course, Rome was not built in a day, and the song's effects could not be achieved in just a few days. Yang Yi to try and perfect. While Yang Yi went to study in the School of Classical Music, Murphy stayed in the coffee shop, reading, listening to music and resting in her and Yang Yi's exclusive booth. It was too boring to be alone at home, so Murphy came to the coffee shop to chat with Ding Xiang or Yang Huan. That afternoon, Yang Huan, who was sitting with Mo Fei for a while, suddenly had her phone ring. She picked it up and said to Mo Fei with a smile, "Sister, Guadabeo is here. He brought you canned candies." Although they had asked Guadabeo in the middle of last month, Guadabeo's family still needed a few days to prepare the ingredients, make it, dry it and then send it by express delivery. After all, they were not using the Sahara Express. The canned fruit arrived at the end of last month, but Guadabeo's identity was special, and he could not leave the military camp. He could only choose a day when there was no mission and take half a day off to send the canned fruit. Yang Yi, the owner, was not here, so Murphy helped to welcome Guadabeo. Maybe because there were classes on Monday, there were not many people in the coffee shop this afternoon. Murphy stood up with Yang Huan's help and went to the door to welcome him. It was rare that Guadabeo was not wearing his military uniform today. In casual clothes, he looked burly, and his short bald head made him look like a bad guy. Fortunately, Guadabeo's face was still quite simple and honest, and his eyes were also very simple, giving people the same feeling as Gung Sha. "Hello, Guadabeo." Murphy shook hands with Guadabeo and said gently, "Thank you for taking the trouble to send it here." It was the first time that Guadabeo had seen Yang Yi's wife. Although he did not chase after celebrities and did not know much about Mo Fei's identity, just the identity of Yang Yi's wife still made him nervous. After he took back his hand, he rubbed his clothes embarrassedly and said, "It's not hard, not hard." "Hey, Guadabeo, why are you so nervous?" My sister-in-law won't eat you. Young Huan raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, "Bring out the momentum that you used to beat me up." "That was just a misunderstanding. I didn't beat you up. I just caught the person who trespassed the military camp." Guadabeo was even more embarrassed. Looking at his embarrassed look, he wanted to find a hole to hide in. "All right, Guadabeo is an honest man. Huan, don't tease him." Murphy could not help but laugh and said, "Ding Xiang, you and Huan help to move the things in. Guadabeo, come in and take a seat." How could he let a girl do the hard work for him? Guadabeo quickly blocked her with his body and bent down to pick up the 2 boxes of canned food. He said, "It's okay. I can do it alone." After a while, in the coffee shop, Ding Xiang poured a cup of coffee for Guadabeo. He took a sip. Dabeo was not used to drinking coffee and felt that it was a little bitter. He frowned slightly as if he was drinking Chinese medicine. "Do you want some milk? Or some sugar? It might taste better with these 2 things." Young Huan could not help but laugh. However, she still suggested, "When I came to my brother's place to drink coffee with him, I was not used to it and almost vomited. Later, I got used to it." Guadabeo shook his head and decided to drink the bitter stuff. Even a girl could drink it. He could not be so cowardly. Murphy sat with Guadabeo. However, Young Huan was the one who started the conversation. Murphy was not good at socializing. They mainly talked about Guadabeo's family situation. Guadabeo was also honest and told them everything. After a few words, Guazi, who often came to the coffee shop to eat and drink, appeared. Seeing the big bald Guadabeo, Guazi shouted happily, "Hey, Brother Dabeo, you're here." Guazi and Guadabeo were old acquaintances. On one hand, they were from the same family 500 years ago. On the other hand, he and Guadabeo were fated to meet. When Guadabeo brought Shen Xinyu and the others to the coffee shop to find Yang Yi, it was Guazi who led the way. Later, when Guadabeo went to the military camp with Yang Huan and lost Yang Huan, it was Guadabeo who found her. Under Guazi's friendly behavior, Guadabeo chatted with him for a while. Guadabeo brought 2 boxes of canned food over. "It's the one that you said was a pity that you did not taste it. My sister-in-law said that there were too many canned food. Do you want to take 1 or 2 cans back?" Yang Huan smiled and pointed at Ding Xiang. "Really? I have to take a look." Guazi's eyes lit up. He patted Guadabeo's shoulder and said with a smile, "Brother Dabeo, thank you in advance." "It's okay. We eat together," Guadabeo said quickly. When he looked away from Guazi, he could not help but look at the smiling Yang Huan. Chapter 589. Guadabeo had only asked for an afternoon off, so after seeing Yang Yi, who had rushed back, he said goodbye and left. However, Guadabeo couldn't sleep the night he returned to the military camp. The next day, during combat training, Viper's captain, Old Li, frowned as he watched for a while. He called Guadabeo over to spar with him. If it was any other day, the 2 Old Lis wouldn't be Guadabeo's opponent. But today, Guadabeo was a little distracted, and Old Li found a flaw. He hooked Guadabeo and knocked him down. Then, he twisted Guadabeo's arm, turned around, and pressed Guadabeo to the ground with a cross. Before the cross was formed, Guadabeo could still break free, but after the cross was formed, his elbows, wrists, and fingers were all controlled by the joints. No matter how strong Guadabeo was, Old Li was still able to hold him down. "Hey, Dabeo, this won't do." Old Li smiled, let go of his hand, and stood up. Guadabeo, who was a bit of a martial arts fanatic, paid more attention to this. After losing once, he came back to his senses. He gritted his teeth, jumped up like a carp, and punched his 2 fists together, saying, "Again." The 2 wrestled again, but this time, Guadabeo was serious, and Old Li couldn't handle it. After a few blocks, Old Li revealed an opening, which was caught by Guadabeo. Guadabeo turned around and went behind Old Li, putting his arm around Old Li's throat. Although Guadabeo looked strong, he was very agile, and Old Li couldn't react in time. Hee hee. Captain, if you want to beat me, you'll need to train for a few more years. Guadabeo said excitedly. Old Lee patted Guadabeo's arm to make him let go, then panted and said, "Impossible, I can't beat you in this life." "Damn, I'm bigger than you." Guadabeo chuckled and scratched his big bald head. The cold autumn wind blew on his head, sending a chill down his spine. They continued to train until everyone was tired and panting. When it was time to rest, Old Lee chatted with Guadabeo. "Debeo, what's wrong? You just went out, and you look like you've fallen out of love?" Guadabeo was dumbfounded. He quickly waved his hand and said, "No. Come on, it's not like you can hide your thoughts. Who can't see that you're frowning?" Old Lee pointed at Guadabeo and said, "Give me a sip of water." Guadabeo handed it over. Old Lee took the water bottle and drank a mouthful of water. Only then did his dry throat feel a little better. "Let's talk. Tell me what happened. You, Guadabeo, actually have a time when you're troubled by love." Old Lee chuckled. Just now, when Guadabeo handed over the kettle, he didn't refute. Perhaps he didn't know what to say, but it could be said that he silently agreed with Old Lee's words. Guadabeo hesitated, but his heart was really uncomfortable. After holding it in for a while, he finally stuttered, "Captain, you say? I like a girl, but she has a boyfriend. What should I do?" Old Lee was dumbfounded. He didn't expect Guadabeo to encounter such a difficult problem when he was moved for the first time in his life. "What can you do? You can only say that you're not fated to be together." Although Old Lee felt that saying this to Guadabeo was cruel, he still had to say it. "You can't rob her, right? If you're a bandit, I may support you, but you're a soldier of the People's Army. This is not right." "I know." Guadabeo lowered his head dejectedly and said in a low voice, "I just think she's very cute. She's also very cute when she fights. She's good at fighting." Guadabeo was narrating, but more importantly, he was venting his depression. Old Lee, however, caught a hint of something. He hurriedly shouted, "Wait." Old Lee frowned and looked at Guadabeo and said, "Debeo, something's wrong. You asked for leave yesterday to deliver canned food to Yong-yi, right?" "Of course, this matter must be told to Old Lee. Where to go, what to do, as long as you ask for leave, you must clearly say it." "And you said that the girl is good at fighting." Old Lee took a deep breath and thought of the farce last year. "Could it be that the girl you like is Yong-yi's sister, Yong? What's her name again?" Detective Conan's bright glasses seemed to have been broken in half. Guadabeo was dumbfounded, but he had no choice. He nodded and said hesitantly, "Her name is Yong Huan, but Captain, you can't tell anyone." On one hand, Guadabeo was afraid that his teammates would laugh at him. On the other hand, he didn't want to tear his sadness in front of the girl he liked. So, he forced a smile in the coffee shop yesterday. "Hiss. She really is Yong-yi's sister." Old Lee felt his teeth hurt. He took a deep breath and said, "You really know how to choose your target. Can you beat Yong-yi?" "Even if I can beat him, I can't. I just can't beat him." Guadabeo's lips moved, and he finally lowered his head in shame. "I remember that Yong-yi's sister is quite young, right? She's at most 19 or 20 years old. I heard that she's going to university?" Old Lee asked. "She got into university this year, and she's in Zhongchuan now." Guadabeo said softly, "I met her last time when they were here for military training." It was also this meeting that woke up his confused heart. "Although you're a little older, maybe 5 or 6 years older than her, it shouldn't be a problem." Old Lee muttered to himself, "Hey, wait, I want to ask you, how did you know that she has a boyfriend? Did you confess to her?" Guadabeo was stunned for a moment, then he quickly waved his hand and said, "No." "Then what's going on?" Old Lee frowned and asked. He remembered that when he went out yesterday, Guadabeo was still fine, or rather, he was quite happy. "I didn't dare to ask, but I felt that it should be a problem." Guadabeo lowered his head and told Old Lee his thoughts. First of all, when they first met, Yong Huan was brought to the military camp by Guazi. At that time, Guadabeo wasn't interested in Yang Huan, so he didn't think much about it. But now that he thought about it, if there wasn't a problem, why would Yang Huan come out with Guazi? This was actually the second reason Guadabeo thought about it, and it made him feel that he had no hope. Secondly, Guadabeo found that yesterday, Yang Huan asked Guazi to bring canned food back to eat, and then Guazi and Yang Huan seemed to be familiar with each other. He paid too much attention to Yang Huan. At that time, Guadabeo's heartstrings were in a mess. Was she with Guazi? After hearing him, Old Li's furrowed brows didn't loosen, and he asked tentatively, "You haven't confirmed it with Yang Huan, so how can you be sure that they're a couple? Perhaps it's just a misunderstanding?" Guadabeo looked at Old Li blankly. Guadabeo, who had never been in a relationship, was slow to react to these questions. "They're just friends, you can't say for sure. Before you really want to give up, you should at least ask her and confirm it with her." Old Li's words rekindled a little hope in Guadabeo's eyes. However, Old Li still didn't want Guadabeo to get hurt, so he couldn't help but tell him a cruel reality. "Debeo, you have to understand that there's a big difference between our status and theirs. You're a professional soldier, and you have to go through complicated and boring training every day. You almost don't have any holidays in Viper, and you have to go out on missions occasionally, and your life is in danger. As for Yang Yi's sister, you said it yourself, she's a university student. A university student's life is rich and colorful. She'll meet many young people of her age, some with good grades, and some with good looks. Other than studying, she can also play to her heart's content. You and she can be said to be people from two different worlds, living a different life, and developing in different directions in the future." Old Li gritted his teeth and looked at Guadabeo, who was in a daze, and said, "It's not that Captain doesn't want you to pursue your happiness. If you've made up your mind, go after her. If you succeed, we'll cheer for you. It's just that, do you really have such determination?" Guadabeo was silent. Chapter 590. The world of adults was still very complicated. In the world of children, there were not so many complicated relationships and thoughts. They would be happy for a simple thing for half a day. For example, today, after Lu Weisha arrived at the kindergarten, she happily told Shi and the others that her mother had finally come to China. Lunch. Delicious food. Mommy will cook delicious food. Share it. Lu Weisha grinned and gestured to her friends. Lu Weisha's Chinese had improved a lot. Of course, a lot of it was learned from Shi and Lon Xian, so some of the words she used were very similar to Shi and the others. There's delicious food. What's delicious? What are they? Lon Xian was the most excited. Her mouth was like a machine gun as she asked quickly. Lu Weisha was confused for a while and asked Lon Xian to repeat it again before she understood. I don't know. Chinese. How do you say it? Lu Weisha mumbled for a while before she said the name of the food in Swedish, falukorv, a type of sausage. A series of words, obviously, no one could understand. Lon Xian did not know why, but just listening to it made her drool. She could not help but turn to Shi, who could speak a little Swedish, and asked, Shi, what is Lu Weisha saying? Shi blinked her big eyes, also full of confusion. She shook her head and whispered, I don't know. Aya, her father did not teach her so many complicated words, but she had already decided to go back and ask her father. In her opinion, her father knew everything. I'm sorry, I don't know. Chinese, how do you say it? Lu Weisha lowered her head in shame to her friends. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we know there's delicious food. Chen Shiyun said casually, we'll just take a look later. That's true. The little ones all laughed happily. Lon Xian was the most excited. She felt that she was going to eat to her heart's content again today, so she hugged Shi and jumped around. In fact, Shi wasn't particularly excited, but she was infected by Lon Xian. The little girl was so happy that her eyebrows were raised in a smile. She grabbed Lon Xian's shoulder and jumped while giggling. Xian, you're jumping too fast. I'm afraid you'll step on my feet. The two girls jumped and spun, almost falling down. Wang Shijuan walked past them with a few boys. They were chatting away, but when they looked up, they saw Shi's smiling face. That pair of big eyes was smiling, sparkling like the sparkling autumn water, and seemed to be able to speak. Her face, which still had a little baby fat and delicate facial features, was like a beautiful painting left behind by God. The way the little girl stumbled and supported Lan Xian as she cried, "Ayaya!" She constantly exuded a cute and approachable charm. However, when they saw Cici, Wang Shijuan and the others couldn't help but recall the fear of being dominated by this seemingly weak and delicate little girl on that sunny and beautiful morning. What was worse was that the little girl beat you up, pushed you down, and even cried at the side. It made you feel like you were in pain, or that someone else was wronged. This unbelievable reaction made Wang Shijuan and the others feel deeply conflicted about Shi. Now that they saw Shi, they trembled and decided to take a detour. Shi didn't think much of it. She even felt a little embarrassed, thinking that she and Lan Xian had affected others. She blushed, raised her hand, and said, "Wang Shijuan, I'm sorry." However, the little girl was puzzled to see that as soon as she opened her mouth, the group of boys, who didn't know who took the lead, hurriedly ran past her with a wah. Of course, she didn't think she did anything wrong. She just felt strange, puzzled, and curious as she looked at their backs, thinking that they had discovered something important. "Don't play with boys." Chen Shuyun snorted and said, "They're very bad." "I don't like them either." Lan Xian nodded and said with certainty, "But I'm also a boy." Nan Zhaoyu said weakly. The little boy looked distressed, feeling that this world was a bit difficult to survive in. The boys didn't like him, and his friends didn't want to play with boys. Chen Shuyun was stunned for a moment, then she said, "It's not that we don't like you, Zhaoyu. It's just them. It's because they bullied Zhaoyu and Lu Weisha." Lan Xian clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred, pointing at Wang Shijuan and the others. After the boys ran past, they laughed, chased, and played, as if they had already forgotten what had just happened. This was just a small episode. After Teacher Kai took the children to learn how to identify numbers for a lesson, it was finally noon, the time that the children looked forward to the most for lunch. Under the influence of Lu Weisha, the children all lined up neatly. Although they didn't line up according to height and looked a bit uneven, the straight line, and the other children who volunteered to line up with them, still made the teachers of the other classes in the cafeteria praise them. "Teacher Mu, the students in your class are really obedient." Teacher Lin, who was helping Teacher Mu to distribute plates to the children, said enviously, "When it's our class turn later, they'll definitely swarm up like bees." The power of an example. They weren't so obedient in the past, but Lu Weisha set a good example. Then, Yang Shi, Yang Luoqi, and the others also lined up. With a leader, the other children were too embarrassed to cut the line and learn to line up. Although Teacher Mu didn't show it, the corners of her mouth curled up, revealing a trace of pride. It just so happened that it was Shi's turn. The little girl held a plate from Teacher Lin and came over to take the 2 lunchboxes that Teacher Mu handed over. The lunchboxes were still warm because the cafeteria would steam the food together with the lunchboxes for the children. It was still a little hot when it was just taken out. This was also one of the reasons why they had to be carried on plates. Hearing Teacher Mu mention her name, Shi raised her little head in confusion. "It's okay. Teacher Lin is praising you. She said that you were very obedient when you lined up to get your food." Teacher Mu said to Shi with a smile. She didn't forget to remind her, "Be careful when you take it. You have 2 lunch boxes." She was praised. She immediately smiled and nodded her little head. It was a little awkward and strenuous for a girl of her age to carry a plate, but at this moment, her footsteps were much lighter. The main character of today's lunch was no longer the delicacies brought by Shi. Even she was looking at Lu Weisha's lunch box eagerly. It was a typical Western meal. Even though it was mixed together in the lunchbox, each ingredient was actually separated and made into a separate dish. There were red sausages, reddish-brown slices of reindeer meat that were the same as steak, small round pieces of potatoes, and some vegetable salad. It looked quite tempting. However, the other dishes were not that attractive. After all, they did not look, smell, and taste good. They were a little different from the dishes brought by Shi. However, the slices of reindeer meat were large pieces of meat with rich sauce. They looked very delicious. Shi, Lon Xin, and the other children who were watching suddenly swallowed their saliva. "I'll give it to you. I'll eat Shi's food." Lu Weisha generously pushed out her lunchbox. She took the lid and put in some of the dishes that Shi shared with everyone. How could the children be polite? They couldn't wait to pick up the food. Fortunately, there were more slices of reindeer meat. There were 6 pieces. After Shi, Lon Xin, Chen Shiyun, Yang Luoqi, and Nan Zhaoyu each took a piece, there was still 1 piece left. The marinated reindeer meat tasted very good. Although it was not fried and eaten immediately, the chewy reindeer meat was a little chewy. After biting into it, one could feel the rich fragrance exploding in the mouth. The delicious taste slid down the tip of the tongue along the meat juice. It was simply an incomparable enjoyment. However, there was still 1 piece left. Who was going to eat it? The children looked at it eagerly. Shi also wanted to eat it. She was like Lon Xin. Before she finished eating the piece of meat on her chopsticks, she couldn't help but secretly glance at the piece of meat under her. Lu Weisha hasn't eaten yet. This piece of meat is Lu Weisha's. In the end, Cici reluctantly moved her gaze away from the reindeer meat slices and said to her little friends, "Ah." Lon Xin called out regretfully. However, she didn't throw a tantrum. She just looked at the piece of meat reluctantly. Lu Weisha didn't say anything and put it in her bowl. "My mom will still, tomorrow." Lu Weisha saw that her friends liked her mother's food and happily said that she would bring the meat over tomorrow. When she said this, Lu Weisha actually felt a little regretful. She didn't know how to express it to her friends. She could only think, if only the herring could be brought over. It's also very delicious. Chapter 591. Justice may be late, but it will never be absent. A few days later, under the warm light of the coffee shop on the corner, Yang Yi raised his coffee cup and opened with this sentence, which had a strong taste of chicken soup but was useless. He smiled and said to the friends who gathered for Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan, "Guys, let's congratulate Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan of 1,000 Miles Chuanshu. Congratulations on finally getting rid of the rogue contract and ushering in freedom." After Yang Yi's voice fell, everyone, including Huayang, Mo Xiaowan, Xiao Ai, Jining Ming, and Murphy, Yong Huan, Ding Xiang, Guozi, Du Yuan Lei, and others who cared about Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan during this process, all smiled and raised their cups to Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan and cheered. Even she swayed in such a happy atmosphere, as if it was the spring festival, and happily imitated the adults to raise their cups. Amidst everyone's cheers, Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were excited and looked at everyone with gratitude. They held their cups and moved their lips, but did not know what to say. It was as if there were thousands of words, but they had long forgotten to say them. Yes, that's right, Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan finally won the lawsuit and completed the termination of their contract with Ronghuada. On the last day of October, Xiongnan announced the results of Tang Rong's investigation. Tang Rong, who had controlled the Xiongnan Television Bureau for more than 10 years, was finally relieved of all his duties and arrested for corruption, bribery, using his power to open the door for others, and other reasons. Without Tang Rong, Ronghuada, who used to flaunt his prowess in Xiongnan, naturally lost his original halo. Not only did the slightly capable agents under him leave one after another, but more and more crimes were revealed by his former competitors. It was worth mentioning that Yang Yi saw that Tang Kai-tai was stubborn in school, but in fact, he just came to pack up his things. After going back, he was going to take Tang Rong's embezzled money abroad under the arrangement of his family. As long as he escaped abroad, no one could do anything to him. However, justice grinds slowly but surely. Tang Kai-tai was stopped at the customs. Because the previous exposure of Zhuazi had not been completely verified, all of his exit activities were restricted. Looking at the current situation, it was only a matter of time before Tang Kai-tai went to jail. Back to Rong Huada Management Company. Without Tang Rong's support and Guazi's relationship, Huayang's lawsuit was finally heard by the court in Jiangqing. This time, the efficiency was very high. With the support of conclusive evidence, Lu Xiaoshu and the others were finally allowed to touch the contract with Rong Huada Management Company. In fact, at this time, Rong Huada's agency couldn't care less about Qian Li Chuanshu, who had no experience and no reputation. The other important artists' requests to terminate their contracts, as well as the government's investigation, were what made them anxious. No matter what, after a year, more than a year, the grudges between Lu Xiaoshu, Miao Chuan, and Rong Huada had finally come to an end. Of course, such good news was worthy of everyone's celebration. Thank you, everyone, thank you. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan raised their cups and said excitedly. But this kind of gratitude wasn't enough, so they decided to thank them one by one. Thank you, Brother Yang Yi. If it weren't for your support, we might have already given up on our music dreams. Lu Xiaoshu walked towards Yang Yi first, his eyes glistening with tears. Miao Chuan, who was beside him, also nodded vigorously. Yes, we really have to thank you, Brother Yang. No matter what we did, in the end, it was still you who persevered. You didn't forget your dreams and stood your ground. Yang Yi smiled and patted them on the shoulder. He encouraged them and said, "Continue to work hard in the future and create more music." Lu Xiaoshu nodded vigorously. Although it wasn't appropriate to say it now, Lu Xiaoshu and the others had already made up their minds. In the next few years, if they earned money, they must return it to Yang Yi. Because they had been fighting the lawsuit for more than half a year, Yang Yi was also on Huayang's side, helping Lu Xiaoshu and the others pay all their lawyer fees. Yang Yi probably couldn't remember this number clearly, but Lu Xiaoshu and the others had specially asked Huayang, so they clearly remembered it in their hearts. Brother Huayang, thank you for accompanying us all the time. Lu Xiaoshu and the others walked towards Huayang. Haha, don't thank me, I'm just fulfilling my duty. Besides, I'm very glad that this lawsuit didn't ruin my reputation. Huayang smiled and said, if you really want to thank someone, you should thank Yang Yi. It's about me again. Yang Yi shook his head with a smile and said, Ah Shu, Ah Chuan, if you two are free later, give Lin Mu and a call. Although he's settled in Harbor City now, he's still very concerned about your situation. Of course, we'll definitely call. Brother Lin even used his own future to speak for us. Lu Xiaoshu said excitedly. After thanking everyone, Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan came to Yang Yi's side again, but this time they were facing Murphy and Shi. Murphy was in a good mood. She covered her mouth and laughed. You two don't have to thank me, I really couldn't help at all. Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan didn't appear to be as nervous and overwhelmed as they were at the beginning. At this time, Lu Xiaoshu scratched his head and said embarrassedly, Brother Yang helped us pay so much legal fees. It must be because sister-in-law Murphy is magnanimous and gave the green light, so we feel that we should also thank you. Murphy was stunned for a moment, and then laughed with the others who heard this. Ah Shu, you really know how to find excuses. There are so many people, and the excuses are not repeated. Well, although I never care about the money at home, since you thank me like this, I will reluctantly accept it. Mo Fei said with a smile, and then she used the naughty tone that Yang Yijing often used. She was eating the cake, and she didn't notice that there was a bit of cream on her face. However, she seemed to have felt something, and she raised her little head in confusion. She looked at Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan with her big eyes. I want to see how you are going to thank Shi, Murphy said with a smile. The little girl was a little confused. Thank? What thank? However, Murphy and the others who were watching the show were going to be disappointed. Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan really wanted to thank Shi, and it wasn't the kind of reason to thank Murphy. Lu Xiaoshu said to Shi very seriously, Shi, do you still remember that last summer, Uncle Ah Chuan and I came to your father's place for the first time, and then we sang a song for you? Shi nodded her little head in confusion. Although she didn't understand what they meant, she said clearly, it was Papa who asked you to sing. Yes. At that time, Chuan and I participated in a commercial performance, and we made some money. We were going to buy coffee to celebrate, but we didn't know that the coffee in this shop was so expensive, Lu Xiaoshu recalled and said. Brother Yang said that we could sing a song in exchange for these 2 cups of coffee. This was a past that no one knew, and people like Ding Xiang couldn't help but come over to listen. Mao Chuan couldn't help but interrupt. Brother Yang knew that we didn't have much money, so he wanted to treat us to coffee. Don't say that, your song also proved your value, Yang Yi said with a smile. At that time, we were very happy, so we sang I Miss Her in the Northern Winter, that we wrote ourselves. At that time, we didn't know that Brother Yang was such a great songwriter, and we were just showing off in front of an expert. And Brother Yang also gave us some guidance, so we could arrange this song better. Lu Xiaoshu said. At first, we didn't think much of it, but later we found that Brother Yang's guidance was very right, Mao Chuan added. So there was such a story. But, what did this have to do with Xi? The little girl was looking at the 2 uncles in a daze, listening attentively, not knowing if she could understand. I just gave you some advice. The reason why you wrote this song well is also because of your own efforts. It's also because you really love music, so you have been persisting in making good music, and constantly modifying it. That's why you have this masterpiece now. Yang Yi waved his hand. Hearing Yang Yi say this, Murphy couldn't help but look at the flute and erhu on the side, which were specially borrowed by Yang Yi from China's National Instruments Department to accompany a new song that he was going to sing for Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan today. However, Murphy had only heard Yang Yi sing a cappella, and had never heard the accompaniment of these 2 instruments. The song was very nice, but what would the accompaniment of these 2 traditional instruments be like? Moreover, although Murphy knew that Yang Yi knew these 2 instruments, and had even used a simulator to make some accompaniment passages in the studio, Murphy had never seen Yang Yi play these 2 instruments. On this side, Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan continued seriously. The main reason for saying this is that, after we finished singing, Xi was beside Brother Yang, and she said to us, Mao Chuan said with certainty, I remember very clearly that the little girl, that is, Xi said, you guys sang very well. Xi was a little surprised, and when Murphy smiled and rubbed the little girl's head, she said in a daze, but I don't remember. Yang Yi remembered and knew that Mao Chuan was telling the truth, so he smiled and said, you can even remember this. Of course. Because we know that children won't lie. Xi is so innocent and cute, she won't lie. Lu Xiaoshu said excitedly. If you lie, you won't be a good child. Xi agreed with this sentence and said with a smile. Yes, Xi's recognition has given us a lot of strength, and let us truly understand that our music is very infectious. Lu Xiaoshu said with emotion, so, we must persevere. Thank you, Xi. Mao Chuan even bowed to Xi solemnly. You guys are making me feel embarrassed. The little girl was actually quite happy, but under everyone's applause and laughter, she was still bashful and hid behind her father's but, sticking out her little head and giggling. Chapter 592. Everyone sat down and chatted again. Yang Yi gently put his hand on Xi's little shoulder, looked at Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan, and asked with a smile, what are you 2 going to do in the future? Find a management company and continue to release albums? Mao Chuan and I are already in our 3rd year, and we can get our diplomas in a year and a half. Lu Xiaoshu said to Yang Yi, at that time, we gave up our studies and wanted to make a name for ourselves in the entertainment circle. Now that we think about it, we were indeed a little too hasty. Maybe we should finish our studies first, and then come out to make a name for ourselves. In fact, we don't have to wait until a year and a half. We are busy in the 2nd semester of our 3rd year, and we need to prepare our graduation thesis in the 1st semester of our 4th year. But there is nothing else to do in the 2nd semester of our 4th year. And we also have to think about our own position. Mao Chuan echoed from the side. His eyes were shining with excitement, perhaps because he had drunk too much coffee. We want to be like you, Brother Yang. We want to be a singer-songwriter group, write our own songs, and sing our own songs. It seemed that Rong Huada had promised to help them write songs and release albums, but in the end, he went back on his word, which left them with some psychological trauma. But this idea was not bad. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. What's more, they did have some creative talent. When Yang Yi just nodded and was about to praise their self-awareness, Lu Xiaoshu quickly added, "But no matter whether we want to come out after graduation or not, Brother Yang, please rest assured that we won't go anywhere. We will sign with your Huai Brothers Management Company." Ah! Yang Yi was stunned. This statement was not right. What did he mean by rest assured? Yang Yi frowned and said, "That's not what I meant. I didn't ask about your plans because I want you to sign with our company. Also, I didn't help you get out of the quagmire because I want you to repay me. But we want to repay your kindness," Lu Xiaoshu said sincerely. Miao Chuan also nodded. "If you want to repay my kindness, then I don't want it." Yang Yi waved his hand proudly and said, "I helped you because I felt that it was not easy for you to pursue your dreams. If I want you to repay me, I would feel guilty." Lu Xiaoshu was also a smart man. He looked at Miao Chuan and said, "Let's not talk about this for now. Anyway, we are not in a hurry to sign with an agency." "That's right. You still have more than half a year. Look carefully, you will definitely find someone suitable for you," Yang Yi said with a smile. "But we feel that Brother Hua Yi is the most suitable for us. The other companies are too much of a bully." Miao Chuan hesitated and said. Yang Yi was silent for a moment. Then, he waved his hand and said, "Now that you've just escaped from the abyss of suffering, all you can think about is how I can help you. That's why you haven't considered things thoroughly. In half a year, you should give yourself a chance to buffer. Think about it carefully and understand more. If you still want to come to Brother Hua Yi after half a year, I won't turn you away from such a fake agency that basically has no resources and can only rely on yourself to fight for and create." Yang Yi was right. Brother Hua Yi really had no resources. Unlike some old agencies, they had connections with many songwriters, directors, and program groups. Without these relationships, it meant that they lacked exposure, so it was not a good starting point for a newcomer to debut. This was also why he would rather send Lin Mu and to Harbor City than keep him. Of course, Yang Yi could use a lot of songs to make Lin Mu and famous, but what was the point of such a strong star for Yang Yi? Moreover, he didn't want these friends to have a sense of dependence on him. Dreams had to be pursued by themselves. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan looked at each other again. Then, they nodded gratefully to Yang Yi and said, "We know that you are doing this for our own good. We will seriously consider it." "It's good that you understand." Yang Yi smiled and said, "By the way, don't you want to learn how to compose by yourself? Old Jean, come here. I'll introduce you to 2 apprentices." Yang Yi called Jin Yingming over and introduced him to Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan. "Old Jin, teacher Jin Yingming is the music director of Brother Hua Yi and Phoebe Studio. He is also a senior music producer in the industry. His ability to arrange music is absolutely at the top level in the industry." Jin Yingming quickly waved his hand and said with a smile, "Boss, you flatter me. In front of you, how can my arrangement be shown? Don't compare with me. I'm more special." Yang Yi smiled and said, "But let's be honest. Teacher Jin has been honed for many years. He can arrange music in a myriad of styles, and they are all very well suited to the market's appetite. This is what I admire about him." Yang Yi put his arm around Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan's shoulders and patted them. He said to Jin Yingming, "These 2 little brothers want to walk the path of a singer-songwriter, but their arrangement level is not enough. Purely guitar arrangement seems very weak, so I want them to learn from you. It just so happens that they still have half a year to go before they graduate." Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were already pleasantly surprised. They didn't expect Yang Yi to continue to help them so selflessly. They didn't know how to express the excitement and gratitude in their hearts. "Of course, this is no problem." Jin Yingming nodded. "What about you?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan quickly nodded. Lu Xiaoshu said gratefully, "Thank you, Brother Yang. We will definitely learn well. Teacher Jin, sorry to trouble you. Learn from each other." I also look forward to seeing your growth. Jin Ming patted their shoulders and said, the company is in Tingshan district, not far from the school. I usually work there. If you have free time after school, you can come and find me. While they were chatting, the others were very lively and playing. They were all multi-talented people, so performing a few performances was naturally not a problem. Especially Guazi, he even sat in front of the piano in high spirits and played a piano piece coquettishly. After Guazi finished his performance, he felt that it wasn't enough, so he waved to Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan and shouted, don't forget our main characters. Ah Shu, Ah Chuan, now that the two of you are not restricted by the contract, quickly come and sing your song. We haven't heard you sing, I Miss Her in the Northern Winter, for a long time. The previous contract didn't allow Qianli Chuanshu to perform in public without permission. Yang Yi also smiled and clapped his hands. He said, that's right. I've been waiting for your performance for a year. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan looked at each other, stood up happily, and walked to the middle of the crowd. Although they didn't bring a guitar, Yang Yi's guitar was also taken to the villa by him. But it didn't matter, because this song could also be played with the piano. In the long lost time before, the two of them not only wrote songs, but also made different arrangements for this song. Miao Chuan was responsible for playing the piano, and Lu Xiaoshu was responsible for singing. I'm lost in the northern winter, wandering in the boundless wilderness, watching a few groups of geese fly away, thinking of her. It was still the same voice that was as clear and clean as the northern sky, but compared to the beginning, the emotions contained in this voice had a bit more vicissitudes of life, which also gave the song a more mature charm. The face that can't come back. Miao Chuan's voice could still perfectly match Lu Xiaoshu, and the two of them cooperated naturally. Everyone listened very attentively, even she was in her father's arms. Along with the song, she held her father's hand and gently shook it. Her bright big eyes seemed to be able to feel the meaning of the lyrics, and showed sadness. Don't ask me when I can cross the mountains and rivers, cross the grassland, and come to your side, because that is today. Lu Xiaoshu ended the song reluctantly. Everyone also wanted to continue, and after a while, they clapped their hands. Thank you. Actually, we still have a few new songs that we wrote during this period of time. But because of emotional instability, there are some flaws in the writing, so we're embarrassed to take them out. When we're done, we'll definitely sing them for everyone. Lu Xiaoshu said shyly. Why are you two exactly the same as Yang Yi? Always thinking of waiting for the finished product to come out? Murphy couldn't help but laugh. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan scratched their heads embarrassedly. I'm just joking. The pursuit of perfection is a good thing. Murphy felt that what she said just now was a bit awkward, so she quickly added on. What she said just now wasn't awkward, but what she said now was a bit awkward. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with what she said, but everyone felt that they didn't know how to continue. Yang Yi helped to resolve the situation. The pursuit of perfection is because their attitude towards music is very sincere. This is also why they can persist until now. Didn't you write a song to sing for them? Murphy felt that she was too stupid, and her brain wasn't enough to understand. She could only change the topic and say the words that she had been holding back all night. I've been waiting for a long time. Boss, you have a new song again? Jin Ming asked in surprise. Brother Yang, quickly sing it. Guazi was also very excited. It was so sudden that Yang Yi had to pull Shishi away, stand up, and smile. Actually, it's like this. 1,000 Miles Chuanshu was able to get rid of Rong Huada and regain his freedom. We're all happy for you. At the same time, this matter also gave me some inspiration, so I wrote a song. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan quickly moved away from the piano. I don't need the piano, I brought these. Yang Yi took the flute and eru from the side and smiled. This song is actually a bit special. I don't know if you'll like it. How is that possible? We'll definitely like it. Miao Chuan was like a little fan of Yang Yi. He excitedly helped Yang Yi move a chair, and even got a soft cushion for Yang Yi to place the eru on. Chapter 593. Since Yang Yi was going to sing a new song, everyone gathered around and stopped talking about it. The cafe, which was warmer than the north wind outside, quieted down. It was as if it was the 12th lunar month of winter, and the outside was covered in snow, while the fireplace inside the house was burning brightly with firewood. Everyone was comfortably huddled together to keep warm, and the warmth was just right. Yang Yi put down the eru and picked up the flute. Seeing Yang Yi's two musical instruments, Yang Huan, Ding Xiang, Guazi, and the other family members and friends who knew Yang Yi but didn't know him as well as Mo Fei, were all surprised. He can also play eru? Murphy and Jean Ing Ming were not surprised. Jean Ing Ming even had a strong interest in it. Using the flute and the eru, which were relatively unconventional instruments, the arrangement of this song must be very interesting. Without further ado, Yang Yi held the flute horizontally and put his hands gently on the holes. His mouth was facing the holes. He just took a deep breath and played the prelude. Note 1. After two short changes of tone, Yang Yi played a long ending note. With his long breath, the melodious sound of the flute became soft and gentle. The changes of tone were also done in one breath. There was only one invisible breath in between. However, when the sound of the flute rang out, the sorrowful tone could not help but resonate with it. The slightly trembling sound of the flute also caused people's hearts to tremble. Although it was their first time hearing it, everyone present could not help but have goosebumps all over their bodies. It was so beautiful. The melancholy was just right, and the sound of the flute was faint. It was as if a young girl was pouring her heart out, making people reminisce endlessly. Many people who knew music, especially Murphy and Jean Ing Ming, who were obsessed with music, could not help but close their eyes and carefully feel the melody. She nestled between her mother's legs. She could not sit still, but at this moment, she did not run around. Instead, she stayed where she was, holding her mother's leg and looking at her father who was playing the flute in surprise. She did not have time to feel proud of her father. The little girl's big eyes seemed to be reflecting the beautiful bamboo flute's shadow. It seemed that she was also surprised. How could this thing play such a beautiful sound? This was the little girl's first time listening to the flute. After two preludes, Yang Yi put down the flute, picked up the eru, and sat on a chair. Although there was a pause, this was an exchange between friends, so there was no need to be so calculative. He pulled the bow, and the ponytail brushed the strings of the eru. The rich and full music with continuous glissando brought out a slightly sad melody. At the same time, Yang Yi opened his mouth. True love is as vast as the grassland, the layers of wind and rain can't block it. As if singing a poem, Yang Yi had a gentle smile on his face as he sang softly. However, although his voice was not loud, each word had his unique magnetism. Yang Yi's singing style was not like Fei Yu's. It did not have the unique tenderness of looking at the sky. Instead, it was more like Huang Bo's singing style. Using some grassland singer's singing style, using the spirit of a man to interpret a different kind of tenderness. There will be a time when the clouds open and the sun rises, the sunlight will shine on you and me. If the first line of the lyrics made everyone unable to understand the meaning of Yang Yi's words, the second line of the lyrics made everyone suddenly understand. What Yang Yi wanted to express was not praising the escape of the 1,000 miles Chuanshu at this time. They had experienced depression and setbacks, just like layers of dense wind and rain, making people feel despair. But do not be afraid, because behind the darkness, there will be light. They will eventually see the moon, the clouds open and the sun rises. Success, or the joy of victory, will shine on you and me like the sun. True love is like the blooming of plum blossoms, the cold ice and snow cannot drown it. Blooming on the coldest branch, I see the spring coming to you and me. Yang Yi continued singing under the accompaniment of the eru. The true love here was no longer the feelings of the original song, nor was it the true love between lovers. Instead, it used a common metaphor in ancient poetry. In ancient poetry, it was common to see poets who could not directly express their political ambitions, and could only use other stories to express it indirectly. For example, Wang Angshi's Climbing the Flying Peak 1,000 Seeker Pagoda, I heard the rooster crowing to see the sun rise. Not afraid of the clouds covering my eyes, I was born at the highest level. It was using the story of climbing the mountain to express one's determination and courage to not fear evil. It was the same here. Although the original A Cut of Plum Blossoms sang about love, the pursuit of free love, and one's own steadfastness. However, it was not impossible to use it to express Yang Yi's admiration for the 1,000 miles Chuan Shu and the rest who persisted in their dreams and finally obtained freedom. Yang Yi's singing paused slightly, and the melody of the eru seemed to slow down, as if it was brewing for an explosion. That's right, the melody rose once again, and Yang Yi's firm and powerful voice rang out. The snowflakes fluttered, the northern wind blew, the world was a vast expanse. This artistic conception was too beautiful. Even though Murphy had heard Yang Yi sing before, she could not help but feel a little excited. It was as if it was winter in the north, the sky was filled with snow, and the sun and moon could not be seen. It was just a vast expanse. A cut of plum blossoms stood proudly in the snow, only for the fragrance of my lover. Similarly, the lyrics gave people a wonderful artistic conception, as if they could really see a plum blossoms blooming in the world of white snow. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were already intoxicated by the lyrics, especially Miao Chuan. He was in charge of writing the lyrics, and he also liked to write poems and lyrics, so he could understand that this plum blossoms was used to express its emotions. The plum blossoms were the most resistant to cold, and they bloomed in the harsh snowy weather. Wasn't it just like how they had experienced the setbacks of losing the lawsuit and the pain of being frozen, but their dreams had not fallen, and were still standing proudly? Miao Chuan clenched his fist, and his face was filled with excitement. He looked at Yang Yi with admiration. He loved this song too much. He really wanted to know how Yang Yi wrote it. The lyrics were beautiful, and so was the melody. Love what I love, no regrets, this love will stay in my heart forever. Finally, Yang Yi sang the last verse for the second time, and slowly ended the song. The ending lyrics seemed to be a message Yang Yi had sent to Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan: love what I love, no regrets. Courageously pursue your dreams. After listening to this song, everyone's feelings might not be very deep, but when they smiled and praised Yang Yi's new style, they looked back and were surprised to find that Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were already in tears. Thank you, Brother Yang. Thank you for the encouragement you gave us with this song. After being discovered, Lu Xiaoshu embarrassedly wiped his tears, and laughed with a nasal voice. It really brought up all kinds of grievances in the past year, so I lost my composure. Okay. It's all in the past. Jin Yingming patted their shoulders and comforted them. Jin Yingming also had a lot of feelings. He had also experienced the lowest point of his life, a very, very deep valley, but he also persevered to walk out of it. Of course, Jin Yingming was not as excited as Lu Xiaoshu, because he was not young anymore, and those feelings were hidden in his heart. Still the same words: let us continue to work hard for our dreams. Believe in yourself. There will be a day when the clouds will open and the sun will see the light. Yang Yi raised the coffee cup in his hand, smiled, and made the final toast. Chapter 594. In the middle of the night, Murphy suddenly had a stomachache, probably because she was too happy to listen to Yang Yi's singing at night. Dear. Yang Yi's ears were still very sensitive. Even though he was asleep, the sound of Murphy crying out in pain at night still made Yang Yi open his eyes immediately, even though they were separated by a wall. Just like how he reacted to danger in his previous life, Yang Yi quickly got up after opening his eyes. Yang Yi covered the sleeping Shi with a blanket behind him with one hand. However, he did not bother to put on his shoes. Without looking back, he directly jumped up from the bed and hurriedly ran to the next room barefooted. His stomach was getting bigger and bigger. For safety reasons, Murphy slept on a separate bed while Yang Yi ran between the two rooms to take care of both of them. What's wrong? Yang Yi asked anxiously when he turned on the light and saw that Murphy's forehead was covered with sweat. He did not know whether it was because of nervousness or because of the pain that made her face pale. I don't know. My stomach hurts a little. It's intermittent. It might be contractions. Ouch, it hurts again. Murphy was in pain again. She held her stomach and frowned. Even though Yang-yi hurriedly came over to help her up, Murphy could not help but arch her body slightly. Is she about to give birth? Yang-yi asked in surprise. He had no experience in this at all. He could only make some judgments based on Murphy's words. According to the book, contractions were a sign of labor. I don't want to. It's too early. It's not time yet. Murphy shook her head and said with some fear. Murphy had never encountered such a situation before. When she gave birth to Shi, it was very smooth. Moreover, it was a natural birth. However, Bao had only been pregnant for 9 months. If she gave birth now, Bao would be a premature baby. Premature babies would suffer from a lot of illnesses and sequelae. They might even die prematurely. Murphy didn't dare to think about it any further. Her eyes were filled with tears as she tightly held onto Yang-yi's hand. Although the pain had passed and wasn't too painful for the time being, she still bit her lips, afraid that she would choke out a sob. Don't worry, it's definitely fine. Maybe it's just a stomachache. Yang-yi was actually very flustered when he saw Murphy's appearance, but he still wouldn't show it. He tried his best to remain calm and use his firm expression to give Murphy strength. Really? Murphy asked sadly. Really? No matter what, let's go to the hospital first and let the doctor take a look. Yang-yi supported Murphy with his strong arm and got off the bed first. Wait a minute, I'll pack some clothes. Actually, he didn't prepare anything and didn't know what to pack. Yang-yi hurriedly stuffed some Murphy's clothes, a warm blanket that might be useful, and some scattered water bottles and other things into a luggage bag. If it were any other time, Yang-yi would carefully fold the clothes and put them neatly in the luggage bag to make full use of the space. However, at this time, he couldn't care so much and stuffed whatever he saw into the bag. Shi, we can't leave Shi alone at home. Murphy looked at Yang-yi, who was busy for her, and felt warm in her heart. She calmed down a little and thought of her daughter who was still in the room next door. It's okay, I'll bring her along too. Yang-yi went to the room next door, took a small blanket, and carried Shi to the room next door. However, in an emergency, Yang-yi couldn't care about gentleness. There were some bumps and noises, which woke Shi up. After putting Shi on the bed, Yang-yi wanted to put a thick windbreaker on Murphy to keep her warm. Murphy slowly stood up from the bed, waved her hand and said, It's okay, I can wear it myself. Now that her stomach didn't hurt so much, Murphy didn't want Yang-yi to work too hard. Is it really okay? Here, stretch out your hand. Yang-yi grabbed the clothes and helped Murphy to open it. They didn't care about the volume of their conversation. Coupled with the bright light, Shi was completely awakened and opened her eyes in a daze. Woo-woo. The little girl didn't have enough sleep, so she didn't know what was going on. She only felt sad and started to cry. Seeing that Murphy was standing steadily, Yang-yi turned his head and carried his daughter. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he coaxed, I'm sorry, Shi, Dad woke you up. Woo-woo. The little girl felt even more wronged. It was as if sleep was her most cherished treasure, but her father had cruelly snatched it away. She buried her head in her father's chest, avoiding the dazzling light, and continued to sob. Actually, it's my fault. Murphy also blamed herself. Let's not talk about this first, let's go. Can you go downstairs? Yang-yi held Shi in his left hand and carried the luggage bag on his back with his right hand. Then he went to support Murphy. I can walk by myself. Mo Fei refused to admit it. In fact, she was also a little nervous in her heart. Being held by Yang-yi without any explanation, Mo Fei felt warm in her heart as she had someone to rely on, whether it was for support or for her heart. Downstairs, Yang-yi drove out his Humvee. The off-road vehicle, like a giant beast, was also the safest existence at this moment. Yang-yi first carried Shi into the car, let her sit in the safety seat, and fastened the seat belt. Being blown by the cold wind outside, the little girl's consciousness was actually somewhat awake. Although she still felt a little wronged, at this time, she also found that something was wrong. In this chaos, it seemed that they were fleeing for their lives. "Papa, where are we going?" the little girl muttered in a daze. "We're going to the hospital. Mom's stomach hurts." Yang-yi kissed his daughter's forehead and said softly, "Sorry, Shishi, Dad woke you up." The little girl's brain was still very sleepy, so she had to turn a corner to understand the meaning of her father's words. Murphy was also helped into the car by Yang-yi. She sat next to Shishi, but the seat was adjusted by Yang-yi so that Murphy could have a comfortable posture. "Mom, are you in pain?" Under the warm yellow light, Shishi's long eyelashes were still hanging with sparkling and translucent tears, but the little girl had already stopped crying. She even looked at her mother next to her and asked with a nasal voice. Murphy was a little surprised, and then she was moved to tears. She leaned over, kissed Shishi's little face, and said emotionally, "Thank you, Shishi. Mom's stomach doesn't hurt that much now." Yang-yi sat in the front, looked at the rearview mirror while starting the car, and said, "Shishi, if you're sleepy, you can sleep in the car." In fact, she was still a little sleepy. After all, it was still 2 o'clock in the morning, but Shishi couldn't fall asleep in the noisy car. In the hospital, Murphy was undergoing further examination by the obstetrician and gynecologist. When she snuggled in her father's arms, the little girl yawned, but she still couldn't fall asleep. "Papa, is the baby about to be born?" The little girl's voice was heavy, and she mumbled sleepily, "It shouldn't be." Just now, the doctor did a preliminary examination and said that it shouldn't be a baby, but just a stomachache. He wants to see what's the reason. Yang-yi gently stroked his daughter's soft and smooth hair and said, The little girl seemed to be unable to bear it. She closed her eyes, and only a soft nasal voice was left. Looking at his daughter's soft nose, Yang-yi gently coaxed her, "Go to sleep. Don't worry about your mom. I'm taking care of her. Good girl, go to sleep." In her father's warm and safe arms, Shishi fell asleep. After a long time, some hurried footsteps came from the corridor of the hospital. Yang Huan, Ding Xiang, and Guazi appeared in front of Yang-yi. Yang Huan and Ding Xiang were now living above the coffee shop, and the house they had rented for a year was returned to Guazi. After all, he had started to take some small roles, and it was inconvenient for him to live in the dormitory. Now, Guazi drove the two of them over. Seeing Yang-yi, who was still in pajama pants, Yang Huan asked nervously, "Brother, how is sister-in-law?" Guazi and Ding Xiang also had concerned looks on their faces. Seeing the three of them, Yang-yi patted his head in annoyance and said apologetically, "Sai, look at me. I forgot to tell you. Sorry for making you come here." It turned out that Yang-yi was worried that he couldn't take care of the two of them by himself, so he called his sister in the car. But after confirming that everything was fine, Yang-yi was so focused on coaxing Shishi to sleep that he forgot to tell Yang Huan and the others the news. It was a false alarm. Murphy is fine. The doctor checked and said that it was normal uterine contractions. But for safety's sake, we still need to do a full checkup tomorrow. But it shouldn't be a big problem. Yang-yi said to Yang Huan and the others. "What about Shi and sister-in-law?" Yang Huan asked with concern. "I asked for a ward for them to sleep in." Yang-yi explained, "It's late at night. It's too troublesome for them to come here tomorrow. Besides, she has to go to kindergarten tomorrow. They should rest well." No matter what, it was good that they were fine. Since they were fine, Yang-yi asked Guazi to send the two girls back. He could take care of them by himself. When sending them to the car, Yang-yi didn't forget to tell Guazi to take care of the two girls. "Drive slowly. It's hard to see clearly at night. Then send them home. You should go home and sleep too." Well, the last sentence was quite important. Chapter 595. Luckily, it was just a false alarm. Although Yang-yi and Murphy were looking forward to Erbao's arrival, it would not be good news for the child's health if he really came early. The next day, Yang-yi sent his daughter, who was still in a daze, directly from the hospital to kindergarten. Actually, Yang Yi slept the least and gave the bed to Murphy and Shi. He even had to suffer from the cold outside. Luckily, Yang Yi's physique was not bad. After a night of torment, he was still fine. On the other hand, Shi woke up very late in the morning. Actually, she only slept less than an hour in the middle, but she also woke up very late. In the end, when her father combed her hair, the young lady was still like a chick pecking at rice. Her head sank, and the upper half of her body fell on the bed again. He did not know if it was on purpose or if she was really sleepy, but anyway, the young lady giggled when Yang Yi tickled her. When they reached the kindergarten, Shi was still sticking to her father. Usually, at this time, she could not wait to run upstairs to find her friends. Yang Yi squatted down and kissed his daughter's face as he said gently, "Go and play with your friends. Daddy will come and pick you up after school in the afternoon." Teacher Mu came up and held Shi's little hand. Shi did not cry and obediently followed Teacher Mu. She even blinked her big eyes and said goodbye to her father. Before leaving, Yang Yi even told Teacher Mu why she was listless. However, what he did not know was that Shi's sleepiness was actually an illusion. The young lady had already slept enough. It was just that her brain gave the wrong signal. When they went upstairs and saw Lon Xian and the rest, Shi gradually became lively again. Amidst the chatter of her friends, Shi's little head also became clear. She regained her usual smile and could not wait to tell everyone about her adventure last night. "My mom was going to give birth last night. But she didn't. Papa and I will send Mom to the hospital." At this point, she even puffed out her chest happily, feeling as if she had contributed her strength. "Wow, Shi, you also have a younger brother and sister?" Chen Shiyun asked in surprise. "Then he is also my younger brother's younger brother and sister." No. She giggled, waved her hand, and explained, "Brother and sister are not out yet. Mom didn't give birth to a baby. Papa said the doctor didn't. The doctor said Mom didn't give birth to a baby." This logic was a bit confusing. Not only was Lon Xian confused, but Lu Weisha was also not fluent in Chinese, so she was even more confused. Shi, your mother, your... Lu Weisha paused for a while, not knowing how to express herself. Finally, she said, "Is she sick?" She had to explain to Lu Weisha again, which would take a lot of time. But after the girl woke up, she was full of energy and was very enthusiastic to explain. She even used some Swedish to explain to her friends. On the other hand, after Yang Yi sent Shi to kindergarten, he was about to leave when he bumped into David, who was sending Lu Weisha over. The two of them chatted for a while, and Yang Yi also took the opportunity to practice his spoken Swedish. If he wanted to speak a foreign language properly, he would have to talk to foreigners and learn the accent of the other party. "David, I think you are not qualified to be a senior executive. How can there be such a free executive? How can you have time to send your daughter to school?" Yang Yi smiled and said to David in Swedish, "In China, that is indeed impossible. But in Sweden, it is a very normal thing." David did not mind and calmly told Yang Yi that there were stay-at-home dads everywhere in Sweden. Furthermore, he also told him that in Sweden, after giving birth, the father could apply for a year's leave to take care of the child. This system was simply. However, David wasn't a particularly qualified stay-at-home dad. He was ashamed to tell Yang Yi that he really didn't know how to make lunch. It was thanks to Yang Yi's daughters sharing that Lu Weisha didn't go hungry. The situation has improved. Although Linda has her own job, she is an artist, and she has her own art exhibition in China. But with her cooking, the house is well organized. David breathed a sigh of relief and smiled at Yang Yi. "That's a good thing. There is a good division of labor in the family." Yang Yi nodded. "Yes, that's right." David spread his hands and shook his beard. He said proudly, "Now, I have time to find the coffee I want to drink." "What coffee do you want to drink?" Speaking of this, David sighed and complained to Yang Yi about the irregularities in the coffee shops in Rivertown. Especially in Tingshan district, many of the coffee shops sold instant coffee. Even if they found a few that sold freshly ground coffee, Their coffee beans are not good. I have invited them to let me smell it. It has a moldy smell. You know that this is impossible in Sweden. David sighed. It was normal. After all, foreigners loved coffee, especially in Northern Europe. Yang Yi had stayed there in his previous life and knew that there were more coffee shops than restaurants in China. Even if it was not a big city, there would be a coffee shop in a small town. Of course, it was normal in China. Everyone had different interests and hobbies. Most people liked tea, and only a small number of people drank coffee. But they did not drink it like water like foreigners. So it was normal for there to be few coffee shops. I know fika. Yang Yi shouted to David with a smile. Fika was like tea in China or afternoon tea in England. Of course, the tea here was replaced with coffee. There might be some desserts like cinnamon rolls and berry pies, but the main theme was still coffee. However, the concept of fika was more casual. There was no fixed time. It was a kind of daily life that combined life enjoyment and social needs. Hearing Yang Yi's words, David nodded with a smile and said, "Yes, but I haven't been able to enjoy a good fika since I came to China. Although my secretary can make coffee for me, the best fika should be at the coffee shop. You know that, right?" Yang Yi nodded. He smiled and said, "In fact, my coffee shop has very good freshly ground coffee. If you really can't find anything you like, you can come to my coffee shop and try it." "Really? I thought I was going to the coastal area for coffee. My friend told me that there are more coffee shops like this in the coastal area, but it's too far away." David was a little surprised and said doubtfully, "The coffee shop at the corner welcomes you." Yang Yi smiled confidently. Back at the kindergarten, she and her friends learned and played with the teachers as usual. It was noon again, lunchtime. This was the most anticipated moment for the children, especially Lan Xian and the others. Because the lunchbox she brought was like the bag on the belly of a certain big-faced blue cat. There were different surprises every day. "I think there will be prawns today. I especially like the prawns made by Shi's papa. It's super delicious." Lan Xian said longingly. "Prawns, I want to eat them." Lu Weisha followed Lan Xian and said expectantly. One of them was tall and the other was fat. It was quite funny when they walked together. In the end, Lu Weisha's mama's Western food didn't change much. After a few days, the little ones didn't have much interest in it, so they looked at Shi's lunchbox again. "I like to eat fish." It was Nan Zhaoyu's voice. "I like to eat chicken wings." Yang Luoqi said weakly. "I like everything you say." Chen Shiyun waved her hand boldly and said proudly, "So I like to eat all of them. Shi's papa makes delicious food. I like to eat all of them too." This suddenly led everyone's topic. However, she was very happy to walk hand in hand with her friends to the cafeteria. However, as she walked, she felt something in her head. The little girl stood there in a daze. "I-oh, Shi, I almost bumped into you." Yang Luoqi staggered and hugged Shi. "Chi-chi, my papa didn't give me lunch." The little girl helplessly held her friend's arm and said to her in a panic. "Ah!" Several friends were dumbfounded. Chapter 596. That's right. Dad didn't make lunch for Shi this morning. The little girl remembered. She woke up late at the hospital this morning. She was still in a daze and acted like a spoiled child with her father. She even ate the soy milk and steamed buns for breakfast in the ward. Then, her father helped her change her clothes and went directly to the kindergarten. She remembered correctly. She didn't bring her school bag, let alone a lunchbox. But what about my lunch? How could Papa forget? The little girl thought in a panic. At this moment, she felt as if she had been thrown into a dry well, alone and without anyone to rely on. She didn't bring lunch? Well, the prawns are gone. Lan Xian lowered her little head in annoyance, as if she was the most disappointed one. Although the other friends didn't say anything, they felt the same way. They didn't think too much about it, and their disappointment showed on their faces. Only Lu Weisha, who didn't understand, was still confused. She asked Shi, what did you say? You mean, haven't you eaten? It's not that she didn't eat. She didn't eat. Chen Shiyun explained loudly. She didn't have lunch. Young Luoqi also explained to Lu Weisha. Now, everyone understood. The little girl looked helpless. She looked at her friends and asked in a panic, "What should we do? If you don't have lunch, you will starve." Nan Xiaoyu thought that her friend didn't understand the seriousness of the matter. She explained seriously, "My mom didn't cook for us once, so my dad and I went to a restaurant." Young Luoqi saw that her friend's sky was about to fall. She suddenly understood. Shi, do you want me to eat with you? My mom made lunch and there are delicious radishes." Young Luoqi held Shi's hand and said with concern. Lon Xen shook her head and muttered, "Radishes are not delicious. I'm not giving it to you. She doesn't have lunch. I want to share it with her." Young Luoqi pouted her mouth and said, "Her mother's cooking was said to be bad. Is it really possible?" Cici asked in surprise. Yes. Young Luoqi nodded vigorously. But at this time, the other children's minds also came around. "I also want to share with Shi. Shi, my mother made a big drumstick, but it's not as good as your father's. Let's share, okay?" Chen Shiyun shouted. "I have scrambled eggs with tomatoes. It's my favorite." Nan Xiaoyu chimed in. "I want to share some with Shi too." Lon Xine was a little reluctant at first, but at this moment, the little girl who was bursting with a sense of responsibility also puffed out her chest and shouted, "Mine is the best. Grandma Wu made a lot of delicious food, fish, and rice. I can't finish it. I also want to share some with Shi." Lu Weisha didn't completely understand, but she understood sharing. The tall blonde girl excitedly raised her hand and said, "Mine, share, Shi has lunch." Just now, she felt like she had fallen into a deep well. At this time, Shi seemed to see a group of friends who were actively trying to pull her up. Looking at this group of enthusiastic friends, the little girl was so moved that she almost cried. Now, they were preparing to line up outside to enter the dining hall. The bleak and cold wind outside messed up the children's hair, and also made Cici's tender little face cold. However, at this moment, the little girl's heart was unprecedentedly warm. "I have lunch." She was a little excited, and her eyes were red. She pulled young Luoqi and Lon Xine's hands and said, "You guys are so good. We all have to share." Nan Xiaoyu knew a lot of things. He waved his hand and summed it up like an old man. At this time, Teacher Shen, who was in charge of commanding and leading the team, came over and saw Shi and the others gathered in a group. Usually, these little girls, including a little boy, were very obedient. What was the situation today? "What's wrong with you guys?" Teacher Shen asked with a smile. Suddenly, as if a drop of water had dripped into a pot of oil, the children all shouted at the same time. Everyone was trying their best to explain for Shi. Among them, Lon Xian's loud voice reflected her skill at this moment. Amidst the noise, her voice was particularly clear. Shi's father didn't make lunch for her, and then Shi didn't have lunch. We have to share it with Shi, and then Shi will have lunch. This and then that and then. Teacher Shan was almost confused by Lon Xian's words. However, she had also come here for this matter. Thus, she looked at the enthusiastic little girls in amusement and said, "Io, why are you all so cute? You're too kind. However, you don't have to worry too much about Yongshi's matter, and you don't have to contribute your own food." Teacher Shen's imagination was running wild. At this moment, what appeared in his mind was these little girls. Well, there was also a little boy. They were wearing patched cotton-padded jackets and green military uniforms. They were hiding in a cold and gloomy tunnel. Outside the tunnel, squads of Japanese soldiers were searching for them with bayonets. Then, they broke off the last piece of pancake and carefully passed it to each other. Pitifully, They even separated the crumbs and ate them. They did not despair and encouraged each other. Their beautiful eyes were burning with the light of hope for their motherland. Of course, when Teacher Shen came back to his senses, he saw a few pairs of black eyes and a pair of blue eyes looking at her with confusion. What did that mean? Yang Shi actually... Teacher Shen patted Shi's shoulder lovingly and pointed in the direction of the door. He smiled and said, "You don't have to worry about not having lunch because your father didn't forget to prepare lunch for you. Look, he brought it over for you." The little girl followed Teacher Shen's finger and looked at the entrance of the kindergarten. The tall Yang Yi was standing beside the guard, carrying a big black bag. Was it really Dad? She still couldn't believe her eyes. She blinked in a daze. But when her father waved at her, she realized that she wasn't dreaming. Dad didn't forget me. She suddenly felt as if she had returned to heaven from hell. Her father's kind smile made her pick up hope again. Papa. The little girl seemed to run over happily, but the moment she threw herself into her father's arms, the disappointment, confusion, and helplessness that she had suffered just now seemed to have turned over. She couldn't help but lie on her father's shoulder and cry. Warm tears streaked across her icy little face. The little girl's big eyes contained a little grievance that seemed to change the color of the world. Okay, don't cry, don't cry. Yang Yi coaxed his daughter with heartache. Are you still sleepy? He was still in the state of she in the morning. Actually, Yang Yi didn't forget to prepare lunch for his daughter. How could he forget? It was just that he didn't even go home after sending her to kindergarten in the morning. How could he have the time to prepare? In the morning, after he took Murphy to the hospital for a checkup, he went home and then made lunch without stopping. As soon as he finished making lunch, Yang Yi sent it over. Of course, Yang Yi still came on time. Since he personally came to deliver lunch to his daughter, he didn't need to let she eat reheated food. He simply came on time. The weather was a little cold, so he could let she drink a mouthful of hot soup. If Yang Yi had really forgotten something, it was indeed something. He forgot to tell she about this in the morning. Until now, he still hadn't remembered that he didn't tell his daughter, "Don't worry, Dad will bring you lunch." However, she wasn't angry with her father at this time. After her little grievance, she was full of joy. Because her father didn't let her down. Her father still cared about her. She had lunch to eat. Her father would always be her most reliable support. The little girl's tears turned into smiles. While shaking her little head, she hugged her father's neck and said in her sweet little nasal voice, "Papa, I love you." Yang Yi's heart was about to melt. He wiped the little girl's tears, kissed her little face, and said lovingly, "Dad loves you too." Chapter 597. Fu Jun invited Yang Yi and Lan Cao Kai, the two shareholders, to the headquarters of the Sahara Online Mall in Yongcheng. They would celebrate Singles Day with him and other executives, waiting for the sales data to come out. But in the end, they couldn't go. Lan Cao Kai couldn't leave because of his real estate company, and Yang Yi had to take care of his wife and children. Especially when Murphy suddenly had a stomachache in the middle of the night, Yang Yi was even more worried. If he wasn't by her side, who else could Murphy rely on? Moreover, when she came back that day, she didn't have any emotions at all. She happily told her mother the story of how she thought she wouldn't have lunch in kindergarten, but in the end, her father appeared out of nowhere. Hearing his daughter's story, Yang Yi had one more reason not to go. If he wasn't at home, who would make lunch for she? Of course, he couldn't leave old Fu out. Yang Yi began to set up some monitors, cameras, and other equipment in the study at home 2 days in advance. He was going to turn the study into a remote conference room, which would be connected to the conference room of the Sahara Online Mall. Lan Cao Kai also came over, and the two of them had a remote meeting with Fu Jun and the others. When the computer was being installed, she brought the little ones over to join in the fun. The little girl curiously watched her father take the computer out of the big cardboard box, then took off the white foam and stuffed it back into the box. "Papa, what is this?" She put her two little hands on the table, looked up at her father's movements, and asked, "The computer." Yang Yi answered as he unscrewed the screws of the computer case. "But, isn't the computer this big? Why is it so big?" The little girl gestured and said in confusion. Yang Yi looked sideways at his daughter and smiled. "That's a laptop, of course it's not big. This is a desktop computer, and its various parts have to be separated. Look, this is the computer, this is the display, and this is the speaker." Although Yang Yi knew that his daughter might not be able to understand or even listen to what he was saying, he still explained patiently. As he spoke, Yang Yi's actions did not slow down. He began to add RAM, replace the CPU, graphics card, and so on. Although it seemed like he would only use it once, Yang Yi planned to raise the security level of the villa while he was at it. In the future, he would install some cameras, infrared sensors, pressure alarms, and other equipment around the villa. Therefore, the performance of the host computer must be guaranteed. Regardless of whether it was useful or not, Yang Yi wanted to ensure the safety of his family. As expected, she wasn't interested in these things. She blinked her big eyes as she watched her father fiddle with the intricate equipment. After a while, she couldn't help but look away. She turned her head to look at Baozi and Xiao Guai, who were making a commotion. Xiao Guai found something fun. One of the boxes that contained the display screens was lying on the ground, and it was facing Xiao Guai. This box was actually not small, but the opening was a little narrow. After all, it was an LCD screen. This narrow opening didn't seem to be suitable for Xiao Guai's thick and fat body. In Yang Yi's house, the 3 British short-hair cats were well taken care of. Not only did Yang Yi cook good food for them every day, but Murphy also often bought imported cat food and small dried fish for them from the Sahara Online Mall. As a result, the 3 kittens ate until they were fat, and their fur was shiny and smooth. Of course, they weren't fat otakus. They could still jump and play all day long. They could climb trees, walls, and anything else. They could only be said to be strong. However, Xiao Guai was still very interested in the box that didn't fit its body size. Xiao Guai stretched out its paws to explore, and then its big head began to push against the opening to squeeze in. At first, the box was pushed back by Xiao Guai, as if Xiao Guai's big face couldn't fit in. However, Xiao Guai didn't want to give up at all. As it pushed against the box, it twisted its big fat butt left and right, rushing forward. Finally, the box hit the bookcase at the back and stopped. Half of Xiao Guai's big face was stuffed in as well. The scene that followed was a perfect example of what it meant to be fat. Xiao Guai twisted its body and slowly squeezed its body into the box. Although the box was pushed open a little, Xiao Guai slowly squeezed its body into the box. Then, its feet, its tail, and it even flipped its body inside. The display box was narrow, but it wasn't small. Therefore, little Guai was like a fish in water inside. It even stretched out its paws comfortably and squinted its eyes in happiness. She watched with great interest and didn't even blink. However, after Xiao Guai squeezed in, Steamed Bun anxiously circled around the box, as if its good friend had fallen into a trap. It ran around the box worriedly. Steamed Bun had completely surpassed the 3 British short-hair cats in terms of size, but in terms of mentality, Steamed Bun was still very childish and still played with Xiao Guai and the others. At this moment, Steamed Bun thought that Xiao Guai was in danger, so it decided to lie down and look inside. However, how could a dog be allowed to get involved in this private cat territory? A fat cat's paw came out of the black box like lightning and slapped Steamed Bun's nose. This scene was very common. Whether it was when Steamed Bun first came to the house or when it grew up and shamelessly followed Xiao Guai around, it had always been slapped by Xiao Guai. Luckily, Xiao Guai didn't show its sharp claws, so Steamed Bun just whimpered and retracted its head in pain. After a while, it wagged its tail habitually and looked in confusion at the strange box that had a cat's paw. Hee papa, look, Xiao Guai ran into the box. It's so big, and it can be inside. Then it won't let Steamed Bun play with it. She looked at the scene happily and didn't forget to tell her father the interesting story that had just happened. These were obviously much more interesting than those bulky boxes and computers. In Shanghai, at the recording site of a very popular indoor comedy variety show called Star and Star's Fate, Zhu Jie, as a celebrity host, and two other professional hosts, Dong Wei and Xue Linglong, were hosting the show together. Okay, let's ask a more challenging question. Chao Tsong, you and Zhu Jie are both idol singers, Dong Wei said seriously, and the audience below the stage laughed. Chao Tsong couldn't help but laugh with them, but her laugh was very reserved. Sitting on a high chair, her short skirt revealed her long legs, looking very sexy and beautiful. Luckily, there was heating in the recording site. Otherwise, Chao Tsong's lips would have turned purple in the winter, just like the time when she and Murphy sang New Elite Chart together on the stage. Zhu Jie wasn't as reserved as Chao Tsong. He quickly waved his hands and ran in front of Dong Wei. He put his palms together and said exaggeratedly, "Brother Wei, you think too highly of me. I'm not an idol singer. You see, I'm not handsome." "Well, I'm just a little bit handsome." There was another burst of laughter below the stage. "And the songs I sing are not popular. It's lucky that some fans of my songs like me. How could I dare to be on the same level as Sister Tsong and be an idol singer?" Zhu Jie said and ran in front of Chao Tsong. The back of his hand gently lifted her soft hand, and said with admiration, "Sister Tsong, you're my idol." Chao Tsong was embarrassed by his words. She laughed with everyone, pulled Zhu Jie up, and said, "No, Zhu Jie, you're also a very hard-working and talented artist. I also admire you for being able to compose your own songs." Hey, okay. Since Zhu Jie doesn't want to be an idol singer, then I can't do anything about it. Although I think that the new song you're about to release, what's it called? It has the potential to become an idol for young people. Dong Wei helped Zhu Jie advertise without leaving a trace, and praised his little brother. Chapter 598. Zhu Jie's new song was already being promoted. Tian Mei had invested a lot of resources into it and had even bought Micro Broadcasting's homepage to advertise it. On November 15th, the new song would be released. Zhu Jie would also be challenging various singers on various major music chart shows. It was like another cycle. A year ago, Zhu Jie had also sung Mistress around this time. Since then, his singing had become a household name. Of course, he also had to bear a lot of criticism. And now that a year had passed, Zhu Jie had started afresh with a new song. He had already accumulated a certain amount of popularity, so what kind of performance would he have? Zhu Jie's fans were already looking forward to it. Of course, compared to looking forward to the results of his song, the fans were more looking forward to what kind of strange song Zhu Jie would sing. They knew the name of the song through Qianmei's promotions, but they had never heard of it before. Back to the set of the show. Dong Wei brought up the topic, and Xue Linglong also chimed in. "It's called Impulsive Punishment. I heard that Zhu Jie, in order to sing this song well, you had painstakingly studied it for several months to hone your singing skills." I just didn't want to be called a lousy singer by everyone, so I wanted to learn from Sister Kong. I wanted to be like Sister Tsong and be an idol singer with both strength and beauty. It seemed like a slip of the tongue, but Zhu Jie seemed to realize it in hindsight. He quickly struck a charming pose to make up for it. It looked like he was pretending to be clumsy, which made everyone laugh again. This guy. His sense of variety was still very strong. Of course, they still had to return to the show. Zhu Jie knew when to stop. He waved his hand and laughed. "Let's not talk about me. No matter how hard I work, I'm not as beautiful as Sister Tsong." "Alright, Brother Wei, what kind of challenging question do you want to ask Sister Tsong?" "This question is..." Dong Wei dragged out his words, which gave Zhu Jie another chance to poke his nose into the conversation. "Wait, Brother Wei, you can't ask about my privacy. You also know that idol singers have to pay attention to their personal image." Zhu Jie turned to look at Chao Tsong with a grin. "Sister Tsong, don't worry. I will definitely not let them ask you if you have a boyfriend. You can just tell me in private later." Chao Tsong could not help but pat Zhu Jie. This guy really knew how to show off. However, this was also not bad. With Ju Jie's interaction, Chao Tsung had a lot of screen time. Moreover, Chao Tsung was originally quite reserved. She still had the airs of an idol star on the stage. Now that Ju Jie was making jokes, she relaxed a lot and her smile was not so stiff. It's not a private question, but don't worry, you have to answer this question too. Dong Wei smiled and pointed at Ju Jie. He finally asked this challenging question. As celebrities, how do you wash your clothes? Celebrities, especially idols, definitely place a lot of importance on how they dress up. However, washing clothes should be quite a problem. Moreover, it's even more troublesome for girls. Many of their undergarments can't be washed together with their outerwear. Xue Linglong said with a smile. She usually supplemented Dong Wei. Boys can't do that either. Linglong, do you think I threw all my clothes into the washing machine and washed them together? Ju Jie cried out, feeling wronged. After a round of laughter, Chao Tsung answered the question. Actually, our clothes are divided into several types. Some are for home, some are for going out, and some are for performances. Needless to say, some of the clothes for going out can't be washed with the washing machine. My assistant will help take them to the dry cleaners. Chao Tsung said. This statement was approved by Ju Jie, Dong Wei, and the others. Indeed, many clothes need to be dry cleaned, especially men's suits. Then some of the home outerwear and clothes that can be washed with the washing machine will be washed with the washing machine. The clothes that can't be washed with the washing machine and some of my undergarments will be washed by hand. In fact, Chao Tsung had a script in advance, so her answer was very natural. She did not know if there was an expert guiding her behind the scenes. This answer also perfectly reflected her as an idol star, but she was still very down to earth. Ju Jie jumped out again. He looked at Chao Tsung with heartache and said, Sister Tsung, you still want to wash your clothes by hand? Do you know that there are a lot of detergents on the market that are very harmful to the opponent's skin? It seemed that he was concerned about Chao Tsung, but the audience who had watched several episodes of this program couldn't help but laugh. They saw Ju Jie take out a bottle of detergent from his back as if he was performing magic. Without any shame, he openly advertised as a sponsor. Sister Tsung, let me recommend you a detergent. Big white detergent, clean handguard. Sister won't have to worry about washing clothes anymore. Ha ha ha, the audience laughed. Dong Wei and Xue Linglong laughed until they were convulsing. Chao Tsung couldn't help but laugh. She blushed and took the empty bottle. Ju Jie. Chao Tsung integrated into the atmosphere on the stage and began to interact. She smiled and asked, I'm very curious, how do you men wash clothes? Actually, I don't want to wash clothes at all. When I was young, I thought that if I could, I hoped to have new clothes to wear every day. That way, I can wear cool clothes every day, and I don't have to wash clothes anymore. Ju Jie responded. And then, Chao Tsung looked at Ju Jie curiously. You must be thinking that reality gave me a big slap in the face and told me not to daydream, right? Ju Jie smiled slyly. Yes, poverty has limited your imagination. Dong Wei and Xue Linglong nodded their heads and laughed. But actually, the main reason why I gave up this idea was that I suddenly remembered that new clothes can only be worn after being washed. If I wear new clothes every day, I still have to wash clothes every day. What's the difference between wearing new clothes and not wearing new clothes? Ju Jie said with a chagrined face. This train of thought suddenly made everyone burst into laughter. Okay, let's get down to business. How do you wash clothes? Chao Tsung laughed until she covered her stomach and said angrily, The other clothes are similar to what Sister Tsung said, but I have a special technique for washing socks. Not only does it not hurt my hands at all, but it is also very clean. Sister Tsung, do you want to learn? Ju Jie asked. Wait, it doesn't hurt your hands again. You can't continue to advertise. Later, Big White Detergent will complain that we asked them to increase the advertising fee. Xue Linglong deliberately stopped Ju Jie and joked. How can it be? How can I use such an obvious method to advertise for sponsors? Zhu Jie raised his head, as if he was very sad and angry. When it came to the specific method, Zhu Jie gestured with his two hands and said, "If these were my feet, I would put on the socks first, then dip them in the detergent and rub them on the ground like this, rub them, and like this." Zhu Jie's performance was very vivid. His two hands were like feet, performing various techniques such as rubbing on the ground and rubbing his feet together in the air. This already made everyone laugh until they couldn't straighten their backs. After washing one side, there is still another side, turn it over, and wear it again. Zhu Jie was still performing as if he hadn't had enough. Chao Tsung, who was next to him, laughed so hard that she almost lost her image as an idol. Okay, if you continue to wash, will you stop? We know your special technique. Feeling, you said that it won't hurt your hands, so it won't hurt your hands. But won't it hurt your feet? Dong Wei said with a smile. It doesn't matter, we still have big white detergent. Zhu Jie understood tacitly and once again left no trace to advertise. Everyone knows that Sahara Online Mall's Double 11 Super Shopping Festival is coming soon, right? Regardless of whether you are single or have a happy family, quickly turn on your computer and open the Sahara Online Mall's website. Big White Detergent has a super discount promotion on Double 11 Sahara Online Mall, 30 off for 100 units, 100 off for 200 units. If you buy it, you earn it. I wish everyone, including my most admired sister Tsung, that you won't hurt your hands or feet when you wash clothes at home in the future. This advertisement made everyone not angry at all, and they even had to laugh and applaud Zhu Jie's cleverness. In fact, everyone was already used to it, because this program had been bought by Sahara Online Mall a few episodes ago, and Big White Detergent was the title sponsor of this season's Star and Star Fate. Zhu Jie's advertising every time was also an interesting scene of this program. This program was broadcast on the eve of Double 11 Day. While the audience was laughing because of Zhu Jie, they were also reminded that Double 11 Day was coming. They couldn't wait to turn on their computers, check their shopping carts, favorites, and wait for the dawn to come, snatching the cheap products that were on sale for a limited time, and hoping that they could be one of the 200 lucky people who could get a free order. Chapter 599. Shi, I'm coming to your house to play. On the evening of November 10th, before Yang Yi could put on his shoes and go out to open the door, Lan Xian's impatient voice could be heard from outside the gate of the courtyard. Shi stood at the door of the villa, holding the door frame and shouting excitedly, "Right away, my papa will open the door right away. Here you are." However, compared with the voices of the two girls, Lan Xian's voice was obviously louder. Shi's delicate voice was very pleasant, but it would be blown away by the wind for a while. Therefore, after a while, Lan Xian's clear voice could be heard again. "What did you say? I can't hear you." Cece's chest was still heaving up and down with excitement, and she still wanted to repeat it at the top of her voice. But Mo Fei stopped her and said, Okay, your papa will open the door for X now." After a while, the guests finally arrived. Lan Hao Kai and Yang Yi were going to have a remote meeting in Yongqing City tonight. Lan Xian shouted that she wanted to come over and play with Shi. He had to ask Wu Jingjing to take Lan Xian to take a bath quickly, and then the whole family came to Yang Yi's house. "You didn't hear me just now. Then did you hear what I said?" Cece also took a bath. The two little girls hugged each other, shouting and making a fuss. It was very lively. Lan Xian's mother also spent a lot of effort to take off her daughter's coat. Yang Yi's house was still heated. They asked the two girls in pajamas to go upstairs to play, where there were dolls and other toys that little girls like to play with. When they went upstairs, Murphy said to Wu Jingjing with a smile, "Xian's voice is so loud that I can hear her voice from far away. I think she is a good singer. You have to train her well." "Really?" Wu Jingjing asked in surprise. She liked singing, and Murphy was a professional singer. Wu Jingjing trusted her judgment. Now that the two little guys had company, they didn't stick to their parents. Murphy chatted with Wu Jingjing in her room next door. They still had a lot of common topics, such as children's education, Murphy's pregnancy, and even talking about clothes and cosmetics. However, she and the others were still restless. The two girls chatted in the room for a while, and then they joined hands again. Holding each other's little hands, they opened the door and ran happily into the room next door. "Mom, why is Shishi's hair so long and mine so short?" Lon Xian enviously stroked Shishi's beautiful long hair that was draped over her back like a waterfall after her shower. "Because Shishi's hair hasn't been cut." Murphy smiled and pulled her daughter over. She took a comb and combed her daughter's wet hair while answering, "When you first met last year, Shishi's hair stopped here. This year, it has grown longer. Look, it's here. I don't want to cut my hair." Shishi waited for her mother to finish speaking and quickly expressed her attitude. Little girls still like to be beautiful. Moreover, Shishi with long hair and a short body was beautiful. Lon Xian suddenly understood. She pouted and said unhappily, "But my mom always cuts my hair. It can't grow long. I want to be like Shishi." "You can't. You can't have long hair because it's very hot in summer. If you have long hair, you'll get heat rash. It's very itchy." Wu Jingjing explained. "That's right. Heat rash." Thinking of those red spots, Lon Xian trembled and said dejectedly, "Well, I don't want to have long hair." "It's okay, Xian Air. You're also beautiful with short hair." Murphy gave Lon Xian a thumbs up and said with a smile, "Shishi, don't you think so?" Cece raised her head to look at her mother and nodded subconsciously. However, the little one's topics changed very quickly. She quickly smiled and shook her mother's hand. She pleaded, "Mom, I want Xian to play at our house tonight. Then I want to sleep with her." Lon Xian also jumped excitedly and shouted, "Yes, I want to sleep with Shishi." Murphy was stunned for a moment. She looked at Wu Jingjing with a smile, and then looked at Lon Xian and Shishi. She said, "Then you have to get the permission of Xian Air's parents." Shishi blinked her big eyes and walked over. She hugged one of Wu Jingjing's knees and shook it gently. She asked coquettishly, "Auntie Wu, can I?" In fact, Shishi was very familiar with Wu Jingjing because she often went to Lon Xian's house to play. Wu Jingjing also loved this innocent and kind little girl very much. However, before Wu Jingjing agreed, Lon Xian shouted, "Yes, yes. You want to stay at Shishi's house to sleep?" Wu Jingjing smiled and asked, "What will you do when you go to kindergarten tomorrow?" "I'll get up and go home tomorrow." Lon Xian's mind was still very clear. "My papa can make super delicious breakfast." She tried hard to promote her family's service. Yes, yes. Lon Xian looked forward to it even more. Sooner or later, this girl would be cheated by a candy. Wu Jingjing had to look at Murphy, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Murphy smiled and reached out to hold Wu Jingjing's hand. She said, "Sister Jing, why don't you stay here tonight? I also want to talk to you. Yang Yi and the others don't know how long it will take, so you can just rest here. The children don't have to worry. You and Brother Lon can stay in the guest room. There are a few guest rooms on the 3rd floor. I'll ask Yang Yi to clean them up." It was decided. It just so happened that the study downstairs hadn't started yet. Yang Yi and Lan Hao Kai were also talking about other things. Therefore, Yang Yi came up to help clean up the guest rooms on the 3rd floor for Wu Jingjing and Lan Hao Kai to rest tonight. After he finished cleaning up, he went to see the two little girls playing in the master bedroom. As soon as he opened the door, Shi and Lon Xian's laughter came out. The two little guys were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. He didn't know what they were playing. Seeing the movement at the door, Lon Xian screamed, "Oh! Shi, your father is here." It was as if Yang Yi had specially come to see if she was sleeping obediently. Lon Xian rolled over and snuggled into the blanket, causing a huge bump to form on the blanket. Shi also giggled, as if it was very fun. She followed suit and got into the quilt. However, the little girl didn't get in completely, and her little butt was exposed outside. "What are you doing? Don't be bored." Looking at the two little girls, Yang-yi couldn't help but laugh. He walked over and gently patted his daughter's little butt and the big bump in the quilt. Amused, the two little girls laughed sullenly under the quilt. Yang-yi reminded them not to run around and to sleep early if they were tired. Then he checked the child lock on the balcony door. He let the two little girls go and opened the door to go out. However, at the door, Yang-yi saw Steamed Bun, who had run over at some point and was wagging her tail, wanting to go in. "No, you can't go in." Yang-yi blocked Steamed Bun and gently patted her little head. Steamed Bun seemed to understand. She lowered her head, feeling wronged. After a while, she curled up on the carpet at the door, resting her head on her forelegs. However, she would occasionally look at Yang-yi with her big black eyes. Her eyes seemed to be filled with melancholy. Yang-yi went to check the child lock on the balcony on the other side of the corridor. When he came back, he saw Steamed Bun's eyes. He laughed unhappily and said, "Hey, you feel wronged, right? You're not my daughter. Do you think I'll be coaxed by your pitiful little eyes?" Calling her a daughter and not a son was fine. After all, Steamed Bun was a female dog. As Yang-yi said this, he squatted down and smiled as he picked up Steamed Bun's face and rubbed it. However, this little pitiful girl still couldn't raise her spirits. She looked wronged, as if Yang-yi was discriminating against her. Okay, Yang-yi admitted that he was soft-hearted. He rubbed Steamed Bun's clean fur. He had just bathed her in the afternoon, so her fine fur was very comfortable to touch. Okay, don't be sad. I'll let you go in and play." Yang-yi opened the door again and gestured for Steamed Bun to enter. Steamed Bun suspiciously raised her head, but she quickly understood what her master meant. She immediately became spirited and cheerfully ran in. "Steamed Bun." The two little girls' voices and laughter increased in volume. "You're not allowed to run onto the bed. If you go onto the bed to play, I won't let you in next time." Yang-yi didn't care if Steamed Bun could understand, or if Steamed Bun didn't pay attention to what he was saying while the two girls were arguing. Let them play by themselves. Yang-yi went downstairs, sat in front of Lan Hao Kai, and poured him a cup of hot tea. Where were we talking? Right, about buying the land. Yang-yi smiled and continued to talk to Lan Hao Kai. Chapter 600. Before this, Yang-yi had done some investigations and careful plans. However, Yang-yi had no experience and ability in the real estate industry. If he wanted to get his target land, he still needed the help of Lan Hao Kai, a real estate tycoon. In terms of business, although Lan Hao Kai was happy to help Yang-yi, the amount involved was too large. He needed to use nearly 800 million yuan in the initial stage. Obviously, this was not a small favor. Yang-yi also needed to offer the corresponding cooperation conditions. "I still have 34% of the shares in the Sahara Online Mall. If I want to sell, you have the priority to buy within 5 years. Also, if I don't make a move within 5 years, I will sell you 4% of the shares at 80% of the market price at that time." Yang-yi's conditions were like an illusion. However, Lan Hao Kai's eyes lit up. He understood that the Sahara Online Mall was now a hot steamed bun. After more than a year of development, the market value had soared to almost 8 billion yuan. After tonight's doubles 11, the overall market value could increase by a lot. Before it was listed, Sahara was already a miracle. It was also the most cost-effective investment he had ever made. His investment advisor also analyzed with him that if Sahara was listed, then the 15% shares in his hands could definitely be sold at a sky-high price. If he really wanted to sell, it was not impossible to make a net profit of several times the amount. However, Lan Hao Kai was certainly reluctant to sell. Now, Yang-yi and Fu Jun were also holding on to the shares in their hands. They would not let go until it was listed, so Lan Hao Kai had no way to get more. Now, Yang-yi's condition really scratched Lan Hao Kai's itch. Of 5 years was still a long time. However, Lan Zhao Kai felt that it was worth his help if he counted the favor of Yang Yi for pulling him into this. Why do you want to sell the shares of Sahara? However, Yang Yi's words also made Lan Zhao Kai's heart beat faster. He asked puzzledly, "Is there any change in Sahara?" "Of course not. I just need to raise funds to build the world's largest and most luxurious amusement park for my daughter." Yang Yi shook his head with a wry smile. He didn't try to hide it. He told her that he had invested so much for his daughter's amusement park. This made Lan Zhao Kai a little speechless. He couldn't help but shake his head and click his tongue. "You started from scratch and earned so much in just a few years. In the end, you're telling me that you're just earning money to build a paradise for your daughter. I think all the rich people in the world would be ashamed to death." Without going too far, Lan Zhao Kai solemnly began to talk to Yang Yi about the commercial land they wanted. It was slightly different from his previous life. In this world, although the land in China was not permanently held by private individuals, it was still valid for 300 years, which was similar to a permanent holding. Jiangnan's Jinling City's Wuqing County. There's a piece of land that the developer ran away with. No one has been interested in it for more than a decade. I want to take it down. Yang Yi spread out the map of Jinling City's Wuqing County and said to Lan Zhao Kai, "You should be familiar with Jinling City. I've checked. You've also taken a few pieces of land there. There are 3 residential areas." Lan Zhao Kai looked at the place Yang Yi was pointing at and couldn't help but look surprised. "Why here?" Lan Zhao Kai looked at Yang Yi in surprise. Although this piece of land has been quiet for more than a decade, it's still very famous in Jiangnan's real estate industry. To be exact, it was a legend. In the 1970s, Wuqing County was considered a small industrial city. Like other coastal cities, it had developed industries, especially the plastic industry and the shoe industry. At that time, there were a few state-owned shoe factories that could be considered the leading shoe industry in Jiangnan. However, Wuqing County's terrain wasn't as flat as other cities. It had a hilly terrain. Compared to other cities in Jinling City, it had more mountains and rivers. It had a huge disadvantage in terms of transportation. As the leaders of Wuqing County's government were promoted and retired, the new leaders were eager to overturn the previous leaders' achievements and establish their own authority. The development of Wuqing County's shoe industry gradually slowed down. In addition to the poor geographical conditions, many factories moved to more suitable places. At the end of the 1980s and the beginning of the 1990s, Wuqing County seemed to have changed completely. However, the withdrawal of the shoe factories and the plastic industry wasn't a bad thing for Wuqing County. Although the economic development slowed down, there was less pollution. Gradually, the green mountains, clear water, blue sky, and white clouds were restored. The piece of land that Yang Yi was talking about was the territory of several state-owned shoe factories. At that time, the factories had their own dormitory area, primary school for workers' children, and even a hospital. The entire piece of land covers an area of nearly 700,000 square meters. Lan Zhao Kai said as he recalled. To be exact, it's 750,000 square meters, or 1,125 mu. Yang Yi calmly gave the accurate data. It seemed that he had indeed put in a lot of effort. This piece of land was very big, but it was only compared to the real estate used to build houses. It was not enough to build an amusement park. However, Yang Yi was also eyeing an island across the water from this piece of land. However, he did not have the capital to take over this island yet. Back then, in order to take over this piece of land, Lianhua Real Estate spent a lot of effort to bribe the leaders of Wuqing County and even Jinling City. In the end, just when they spent money to move the original residents away, those leaders were exposed. Lan Zhao Kai lamented. How much capital did Lianhua Real Estate have back then? However, they were implicated. The boss was arrested and started to collapse. The real estate development of that piece of land also came to a halt. However, the legend that Lan Zhao Kai spoke of was far more than that. At the end of the 90s, the new leaders of Wuqing County were deceived by a fake Hong Kong businessman. They sold the land of the bankrupt Lianhua real estate to the other party and even actively helped him apply for a bank loan. In the end, the other party got the loan and ran away, never to be heard from again. The new leaders were all stripped of their official titles, but they also left behind a mess and made Wuqing County the laughingstock of the whole country. This was also why the previous leaders of Wuqing County were unwilling to mention it. Then, as the development of the other side of the county was in full swing, this remote scar was gradually covered by the dust of history. If you want to take this piece of land, if you don't mind the saying that whoever touches it will be unlucky, this piece of land is also a good choice. After Lan Hao Kai finished the story, he calmly analyzed, at least, no one is interested in it now, so it won't cost too much to buy it. The problem is, even if it's not expensive, it's still more than 1,000 mu of land. Do you have enough cash? I prepared 800 million. If it's not enough, I'll add more depending on the situation. Yang Yi said firmly, I have to take this piece of land, and I have to take it in one piece. 800 million. Lan Hao Kai looked at Yang Yi with some surprise. He didn't know that Yang Yi sold China's Facebook, but he didn't ask in detail about Yang Yi's source of funds. He only pondered for a moment and said, 800 million shouldn't be a problem, but you might have to negotiate with the local government. Lan Hao Kai felt like he was missing some information about this piece of land, like there was a secret behind it, but he couldn't remember it at the moment. However, Lan Hao Kai didn't have time to think about it, because in Yongcheng, Fu Jun had just finished inspecting the employees of Sahara Online Mall who were anxiously waiting for the midnight battle. His secretary was in the conference room adjusting the remote conference equipment for him and the other executives. We'll talk later, let's watch Singles Day first, Yang Yi said to Lan Hao Kai as he turned on the camera and sound. Chapter 601. Mu Yuyan, the teacher of Shi Shi's class at Springfield Kindergarten, usually went to bed early at 11 p.m. After all, she had to wake up early the next morning to make breakfast for her husband and son and then go to work at the kindergarten. But tonight, when it was close to midnight, Mu Yuyan still couldn't fall asleep. She opened her eyes and looked at the time. She couldn't help but roll over and put on a thick coat over her silk pajamas. She pushed open the door to the living room. Under the dim light in the living room, Mu Yuyan's husband was watching TV. There was a laptop on the table next to him, but the screen was off. Only the blue working indicator was on. Hearing the movement, Mu Yuyan's husband looked at her strangely and asked, "Why are you up? Didn't we agree that I would pay for everything in your shopping cart in the wee hours of the morning?" "Ah, I'm worried. What if you forget, or if you click too slowly, or if you buy the wrong things? You men are so stupid when it comes to shopping." Mu Yuyan shook her head and said. Mu Yuyan's husband shook his head helplessly and said, "Okay, you do it yourself." Mu Yuyan was already sitting in front of the computer. She used the mouse for a while until halftime. Her husband turned on the living room lights and walked over to her. "It's only been a while and you bought so much? You bought a lot of clothes and shoes before, why are you buying more now?" He looked at the extra items in the shopping cart and asked in surprise. "It's cheap. Look at this roll of paper. It usually costs more than 30 yuan at the supermarket, but now it's only 50 yuan for 3. And this shampoo?" Mu Yuyan nagged on about her husband's life experience. Not to mention, other than the discount, all the cell phone products on Singles Day will be sold at a discount of 50 yuan if the total is 300 yuan. When has there ever been such a good deal? Buy as much as you can. The problem is, can you finish buying so much? Sure, if we buy so much, we won't have to go to the supermarket for half a year. Also, if we have more, we can send some to our parents. Mu Yuyan wasn't sleepy at all and said in high spirits. This scene was playing out all over the country. And it wasn't just women who went crazy. Men also couldn't help but open their wallets. Just like in Guangzhou, Mu Yuqing stayed in front of his computer. His shopping cart was also stuffed with many things. For example, the game consoles, indoor treadmills, and other big products that he usually coveted were also organized in the Sahara Online Mall on Singles Day with discounts and promotions. Of course, Mu Yuqing could not miss this good opportunity. However, even though they both had the same surname, Mu Yuqing wasn't as crazy as Mu Yuyan. He had already gathered everything in the shopping cart a few days ago. Now, Mu Yuqing refreshed the Sahara Online Mall's webpage again and again. It was not that he wanted to grab the so-called free-of-charge opportunity, but that Mu Yuqing, as a senior in the IT industry, did a small test. It's already 11:55, and the web page is still refreshing smoothly. There's no sign of a traffic jam. Mu Yuqing was a little surprised and muttered to himself, "So what's the reason for this? Did the Sahara Online Mall's 11/11 promotion get messed up? No one came to join in the fun?" Of course, Mu Yuqing himself didn't believe in this assumption. Since the end of October, Sahara Online Mall's promotion for the November 11th shopping festival had been fully launched. All the industry insiders were amazed by this shopping festival. Of course, the idea of a shopping festival was not very new. On New Year's Day this year, Sahara Online Mall had organized a promotion and the effect was not bad. However, what Mu Yuqing and the others valued was the hype of this shopping festival's operation. The November 11th that went viral early on the internet was a meme for Singles Day. Now, even if Sahara did not admit it, Mu Yuqing knew who was behind the rapid promotion of this topic. Compared to the overwhelming publicity, what shocked the industry insiders was the discount of Sahara Online Mall's promotion this time. With such a discount, the entire Chinese population would go crazy if they saw it. Obviously, the manufacturers behind Sahara also gave a lot of support. However, to obtain such support, Sahara must have prepared for a long time before this. These could still be inferred. Another thing that made the internet industry excited was that this holiday carnival covered a wide variety of products, from household necessities to kitchen firewood, from oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea, from clothes, bags, shoes, to sports equipment, outdoor equipment, from small mobile phones, computers, and other digital products to large refrigerators, washing machines, and other household appliances. There were too many. Household necessities like paper towels, firewood, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea, refrigerators, washing machines, and so on, these products that were too small or too big, people basically did not think of buying them on the internet. However, now, it appeared on Sahara Online Mall. Ever since the clothing market was shaken, Sahara Online Mall had finally ignited the war between online stores and physical stores in almost all industries. This November 11th shopping festival is a shopping carnival for the people of the country, and it is also a carnival for the internet industry. If it succeeds, it proves that the internet will eventually change our world and most of our living habits. If it fails, sorry, I can't think of any possibility that Sahara Online Mall will fail. Zhu Jian, the godfather of the domestic internet, the founder and chairman of SNS, gave Sahara Online Mall a very high evaluation in an interview with Internet Weekly a week ago. Mu Yuqing did not believe that Sahara Online Mall would mess up, so if it did not mess up, it meant that their servers were well prepared to cope with a large number of visits. There's an expert behind Sahara Online Mall. But then again, without an expert, who could create a company worth close to 10 billion in just a year or two? Mu Yuqing secretly exclaimed. However, just as he was letting his imagination run wild, it was already past midnight. Mu Yuqing came back to his senses and refreshed the web page with interest. He clicked on the payment button with the millions of people in the country. This time, the web page lagged a little. It was expected. Add the server, add the backup server. Guangzhou Sahara Online Mall was bustling with activity. Fu Jun patted the table. He was still calm, but his voice was a little excited as he ordered. "Boss, don't worry, we have a plan. This small disturbance is expected, it will be dealt with immediately." The technical director comforted him. The scene was noisy. Fu Jun and the others did not have time to communicate with Yang Yi and Lanzhao Kai. However, Lanzhao Kai was looking at the screen with great interest. He knew that the more lively it was, the more it meant that they had succeeded. Yang Yi was relatively calm. He had expectations for the current situation and the possible results in the future. Moreover, no matter how prepared Sahara Online Mall was, it was the first time it held a promotion. It was impossible for it to be like a certain cat in Yang Yi's previous life, who could break through 100 million or a billion in minutes. Since it could not be compared, the results that they could achieve now would not shock him. What was there to be anxious about? I'm going to check on the children. Although they are asleep, she likes to kick off her blanket at night. Yang Yi nodded at Lan Hao Kai and smiled. Ah, you're not waiting for the data? Lan Hao Kai asked in surprise. What surprised him even more was that Yang Yi was as calm as a bystander. Lan Hao Kai's hands were shaking. He wanted to know how high the sales of this event would be. It's still early. Look at them, they are still busy dealing with the problem. It will take at least 10 minutes for the data to come out. What's the point of waiting? Yang Yi smiled casually. Besides, aren't you still here? I'll come back after seeing the children. If they have the data, you can write it down and tell me. Chapter 602. Yang Yi went upstairs and opened the door to the master bedroom. Steamed Bun, who was sleeping on the carpet, was very vigilant. It was unknown when it had raised its head, but in the darkness, it was looking at Yang Yi with a pair of bright eyes. Of course, the loyal Steamed Bun knew that it was the big master from the sounds and smells, so it only raised its head and didn't attack. Shoo! Yang Yi turned on the light in the master bedroom and waved his hand at Steamed Bun. Steamed Bun didn't understand. Instead, it got up and ran to the big master's feet. It rubbed its head and wagged its tail, acting spoiled. Yang Yi didn't care about it. Looking at the two little girls on the big bed, he couldn't help but smile. As expected, she kicked off her blanket. Fortunately, there was a heater in the master bedroom, so she didn't have to worry about catching a cold. But the scene in front of him was a bit interesting. Lan Xian slept on her stomach, her head turned to Yang Yi. Yang Yi could see that her small mouth was open, and her saliva had wet a pillow towel. She's sleeping posture wasn't any better. Although she slept on her back, she didn't sleep well. Her limbs were spread out, and she even turned around to form a perpendicular line with Lan Xian. Not only that, but the little girl's slender legs and cute little feet were resting on Lan Xian's chubby little butt, as if it was very comfortable to rest on it. Otherwise, why would there be a faintly discernible smile on the little girl's delicate face? After looking at his daughter's sleeping posture for a while, Yang Yi shook his head. He walked to the bedside, stretched out his arms, and lifted the little girl's legs. Then, he wrapped his arms around her back and gently lifted her up. He turned her body and let her sleep on her little pillow. Lan Xian was the same. Yang Yi let the little salted fish turn over and changed her pillow towel while he was at it. Finally, after covering them with a blanket, Yang Yi bent down and patted Steamed Bun's head, turned off the light, and left. When Yang Yi left, Lan Hao Kai was a bit bored. He casually flipped through the map of Wuchang County on the table. It was mainly about the piece of land that Yang Yi had mentioned. However, when Lan Zhou Kai looked through it this time, he made a new discovery. General's Shrine? Seeing these three words, Lan Hao Kai's mind suddenly flashed with a flash of inspiration. He remembered the secret that he had forgotten to cut out earlier. However, Lan Hao Kai couldn't help but frown and mutter to himself, "This doesn't make sense. Yang Yi is Anqing province, and his ancestors are farmers." Just as Lan Zhou Kai was staring at the map with a frown, Yang Yi returned. "What are you looking at?" asked Yang. Just as Lan Hao Kai was about to ask his question, there was finally a response from Yongqing City. A staff member waved his hands excitedly and shouted, "It's out, the data is out." Urgent matters were more important, so Lan Hao Kai and Yang Yi quickly turned to look at the screen on the wall. Fu Jun, who was dressed in a suit but had loosened his tie, smiled. He waved his fingers and shouted, "Put it on the big screen." Very quickly, rows and rows of data appeared on the screen. "Yang Yi, Boss Lan, did you guys see it?" Fu Jun moved closer to the secondary camera and said excitedly to Yang Yi and the others, 1 minute and 47 seconds, the transaction amount broke 10 million. Was it that scary? The fat on Lan Hao Kai's face couldn't help but tremble. Of course, Yang Yi was still very calm. After all, in his previous life, it wasn't as if he hadn't seen figures like breaking 100 million, a billion, or even 10 billion in a few minutes. Fu Jun was beyond excited. This number was even higher than his highest expectations. After calming himself down, he said, "From the current performance of the data, it will probably break 100 million in the next half an hour or so." There was no need to wait for it to break 100 million. Such an exciting number was already enough for them to celebrate. Lan Hao Kai opened the red wine he had brought and poured Yang Yi a glass as well. They clinked glasses with Fu Jun, who was far away in Yongcheng, and the other executives and staff in the conference room to celebrate their success. Yang Yi took a sip and stopped. He no longer drank alcohol. After everyone had calmed down, Yang Yi said to Fu Jun, "The most important thing is to know the final transaction amount. It can be used as a guide for our future manufacturers. However, the most important thing now is to wait until the transaction amount breaks 100 million, then announce the good news on microbroadcasting." "Wouldn't that be too ostentatious?" Fu Jun asked doubtfully. Yang Yi's lips curled up slightly and said, "Yes, we have to be ostentatious. Our 11/11 shopping carnival is like a party. The more lively it is, the more people will participate. Think about it, our transaction amount broke 100 million in less than half an hour. Wouldn't the spectators who saw everyone buying and buying rush to join in as well?" This logic wasn't hard to understand. People had the mentality of following the crowd. Therefore, Fu Jun quickly understood. He nodded, called his secretary, and ordered him to do so. Fu Jun and the others still had work to do in the Sahara Desert. Yang Yi and Lan Hao Kai turned off the sound and continued to discuss their matters. "Brother Yang, tell me honestly. Aside from the amusement park you mentioned, do you have any other intentions for taking this piece of land?" Lan Hao Kai's face finally turned serious as he asked Yang Yi seriously. "What other intentions?" Yang Yi felt a chill in his heart. However, he controlled his expression very well and didn't show any fluctuations in his heart. Instead, he showed his doubts. "What do you mean? This general shrine?" Lan Hao Kai pointed at the map and said. However, Lan Hao Kai was a little disappointed that he didn't see any fluctuations in Yang Yi's expression. "General's shrine?" Yang Yi first looked at Lan Hao Kai in confusion, then looked down at the map. He seemed to think for a while before he suddenly smiled. "I remember, Lianhua Real Estate had some disputes in this regard before. The General's Shrine seems to be the ancestral shrine of a historical figure. Lianhua Real Estate insisted on demolishing it, but it caused a dispute with the villagers. Later, nothing was settled." "You really don't know?" Lan Hao Kai breathed a sigh of relief. Instead, he excitedly said, "Let me tell you. You know the Yang army of the previous dynasty, right? They were the most powerful army in resisting the Japanese invaders. At that time, the Yang army had more than 30,000 soldiers from Jiangnan. They killed the Japanese invaders on the coast until they cried for their parents. But you're from Anqing, so you might not know this, but the Yang clan's army was stationed in Jinling City. Because Jinling City is close to Min Province, it was able to take care of the two places that were most heavily raided. General Yang had also settled his family in Wuqing County. This general's shrine is the remains of the Yang clan's ancestral hole." Lan Hao Kai sighed. Lan Hao Kai didn't need to tell Yang Yi about this history. Yang Yi was much more familiar with it than he was. Moreover, Yang Yi also knew why his ancestors settled his family in Wuqing County. It was because this was the headquarters of the Yang Army's navy. The other uninhabited island that Yang Yi had his eyes on was the training ground for their navy. "I asked you this before because I thought you had some connection with the Yang army. However, there are many people with the surname Yang. Moreover, you are from Anqing Province. I was thinking too much." Lan Hao Kai smiled and waved his hand. Yang Yi smiled slightly, but he sighed secretly in his heart. "You didn't think too much. I didn't know you knew so much. However, the fewer people who know about that past, the better. I didn't tell you because I wanted to protect you." Big Brother Lan Hao Kai hesitated for a moment, then shook his head and said, "There is something I need to tell you. It is a rather secretive matter. I heard my father talk about it before. There should be very few people who know about it now. However, I feel that if you want to invest so much money in this, it would be best for you to understand." Amidst Yang Yi's silent shock, Lans Hao Kai told him about the great things that Yang Jie, who was also his father, Yang Chongguei, had done in the Japanese territory. Of course, Lans Hao Kai didn't know the details. He only gave a rough description and emphasized the story of the old master burning down the shrine. Lans Hao Kai was exultant as he spoke, as if he had personally experienced it. "I heard that the person who did this was a descendant of the Yang army. Then, the Japanese diplomats even came to investigate. It was my father who told me about this. My father had some friends who were high officials in Zhongnan in his early years, so he knew about this." Lans Hao Kai's face was full of admiration as he said ruefully, "It's a pity that I didn't get to know this great hero. Moreover, after so many years, the hero is probably no longer around." Yang Yi's stomach was about to cramp from laughing. He thought to himself, "You actually know him, and you even shook his hand and talked to him before. I'm telling you this mainly because I want to tell you that the General Shrine isn't simple. With so many complicated relationships, do you still want this piece of land?" Lans Hao Kai became serious as he looked at Yang Yi. "Yes. It's hard to find such a big piece of land that doesn't have any disputes over demolition." Yang Yi smiled as if nothing had happened. "Moreover, you don't have to worry about the General's Shrine." "How big is the General's Shrine?" "It's not even worth mentioning compared to the land I want to build an amusement park. You can tell the local government that the amusement park we build will bypass this place and let it retain its original appearance." That's not what I meant," Lans Hao Kai said helplessly. Yang Yi knew that Lans Hao Kai didn't mean that, but he wasn't worried because Yang Yi had also gone to Wuching County to investigate. The entire land was like a ghost town, deserted and full of grass. Moreover, near the General's Shrine, not to mention the Japanese, it was more likely that there would be ghosts. He believed that after so many years, the people that Yang Chongguei mentioned would have already left. After all, no matter how big the matter was, it would fade with time. The Japanese couldn't possibly spend money to hire people to watch over it. Lans Hao Kai was more considerate than Yang Yi. He touched his stomach and pondered, "Although you're not a member of the Yang family army, your surname is still Yang. If people with ulterior motives find out, it will still cause some trouble. How about this? Use my name to buy this piece of land. I'll sign a transfer contract with you, but on the surface, use my company to show up. You just have to control it behind the scenes." Yang Yi was stunned. He didn't expect Lans Hao Kai to think so much for him. "This. Big Brother Lon, I don't know how to thank you." Yang Yi felt that his plan was even more perfect. "What are you thanking me for? Shi and Xian Air are good friends. You and I are good friends too. If we were in ancient times, we would be friends for generations. Moreover, you promised to sell the shares of Sahara Online Shopping Center to me. You need money to build your amusement park anyway." Lans Hao Kai chuckled and said, "In the end, not only will I not lose money, I'll even earn more, so there's no need to thank me." Yang Yi laughed. "Originally, I was so touched that I was prepared to invite you to participate in this project. But now that you've said it, I think it's fine. This amusement park of yours, to spend so much money on it, it's practically a bottomless pit. If you want me to participate, I won't be willing." Lans Hao Kai smiled proudly. Yang Yi shrugged and only smiled without saying anything. "Wait." Lans Hao Kai started to waver. He frowned and looked at Yang Yi. "Old brother Yang, from what I know about you, you never do business that loses money. Could your amusement park be profitable?" Yang Yi laughed meaningfully. Chapter 603. Yang Yi and Lans Hao Kai talked about the amusement park until very late into the night. Even after the meeting with the people in Yangcheng, they were still discussing some problems with the operation of the amusement park. Yang Yi wasn't afraid to tell Lan Hao Kai, because all the IP was in his hands. They chatted almost all night, so early the next morning, when Yang Yi went to wake Shi Shi and Lan Xian up, Lan Hao Kai had just returned to his own villa to sleep. "We worked too late last night. Big brother Lan went back to rest first. You and Xian can have breakfast at my place before going back," Yang Yi said to Wu Jingjing. "Oh, it's okay. He's always like this when he's busy with work," Wu Jingjing said with a smile. She had also woken up and was now helping the sleepy Lan Xian get dressed. The little girl who had been woken up didn't seem to have had enough sleep. Wu Jingjing turned around to grab a sweater, but didn't manage to catch her. Lan Xian fell back in a daze again. Ha 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 ha. She was awake. She hugged her little blanket and sat on the bed. She turned to look at her little friend's sleepy face and couldn't help but laugh. "What are you laughing at?" Early in the morning, Yang Yi heard his daughter's sweet laughter and couldn't help but feel happy. He rubbed the little girl's head and said, "Get up. Daddy will take you to wash your face and brush your teeth, then do some exercise. It's time for breakfast." Leaving the bedroom to Wu Jingjing, Yang Yi walked out with the energetic Shi Shi. "Papa, the sun is already up and Xian is still sleeping." The little girl was still happily holding her father's hand and jumping around happily. Maybe it's because she's not used to sleeping? After all, it's her first time sleeping at home, so she didn't sleep well last night. Yang Yi explained to his daughter, "Don't talk about other people. Didn't you also not wake up a few days ago?" "Of course not, he. The little girl stuck out her tongue in embarrassment. She even broke free from her father's hand and ran to the front with a bell-like laughter so that she could not see her father's teasing expression. When it was time for breakfast, Lan Xian woke up. For breakfast today, Yang Yi broke the usual routine and made Chinese crepes for everyone. Everyone knew that jianbing was not a new dish, but it was the first time Lan Xian and Shi had seen it, especially Lan Xian. When the little girl saw the delicious and fragrant jianbing, her saliva almost flowed out like a waterfall. It was not difficult to make crepes. Other than the fruit that was bought, Yang Yi had mixed all the other ingredients by himself. Yang Yi had all kinds of kitchen utensils in his house. He made a big frying pan, turned on a small fire, brushed it with a thin layer of oil, scooped some flour paste, spread it flat, and then sprinkled the egg mixture, spread it flat. Those who had eaten the Chinese crepes were more familiar with these processes, so there was nothing much to say. It was worth mentioning that Yang Yi added some fresh tomatoes in addition to lettuce, ham, and fruit. Although the heat was not enough to cook the tomatoes, they could be eaten raw just like the lettuce. In addition, there was also fried bacon that was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Of course, Yang Yi did not put youtiao in it, as he was afraid that the two little girls would eat too hot. He added a little more lettuce and tomatoes. There were red, green, yellow, white, eggs, meat, vegetables, and crunchy fruit. This Chinese crepe naturally looked and smelled good, and the two little girls were very hungry. Before eating the Chinese crepes, drink some soy milk to warm your stomach. Yang Yi poured soy milk for Lan Xian and said with a smile to the little girl who could not sit still. She did not need her father to remind her. She quickly picked up the cup and began to drink. She gulped down a few mouthfuls, and then she did not forget to lick the soy milk on her lips. Xian, the soy milk is delicious. She turned her head and said to Lan Xian with a smile. The little girl was eating breakfast with her friends, so she was in a very good mood. She unconsciously played the role of the little host and persuaded her friends to drink the soy milk. "Is the soy milk in your house freshly ground? It tastes very good." Wu Jingjing was full of praise. "Well, I bought the soy milk myself. The soy milk made from it is thicker, and there is no need to add sugar. If you add a little coconut powder, the taste will be sweeter," Murphy said to Wu Jingjing. "I see." Wu Jingjing felt that she had learned a trick, so she nodded with a smile. "Don't look at me like that. I'm not so good. Yang Yi did it, and then I just watched him do it. The more I watched, the richer my theoretical knowledge became." Murphy pretended for a while, and finally she could not help but laugh and confess to Wu Jingjing. Yes, Murphy now knew how to cook those dishes. Because she was too bored after being pregnant, she often went to watch Yang Yi cook. Yang Yi also tirelessly told her why he put vinegar, cooking wine, and so on. But rich theoretical knowledge was one thing, and practical experience was another. When Murphy was about to cook, she was in a hurry and her mind was blank. She was not as relaxed as she was now. After drinking the soy milk, the two little girls could not wait to deal with the Chinese crepes on their plates. It was definitely inconvenient to use chopsticks. Under Yang Yi's reminder, Shi and Lan Xin, who had washed their hands, directly started to eat half of the Chinese crepes. The first bite, Shi's mouth was not big, so she ate the outer layer of the crepe. The crepe with egg was a little thick, but it was quite fragrant. The texture of the egg made the crepe not so monotonous. Of course, the second bite was even better. The little girl bit into the half-cut ham sausage, and she even pulled out a lettuce from the Chinese crepe. Coupled with the crispy biscuit-like fruit, Shi's eyes lit up. Next, the juicy bacon and sweet and sour tomatoes gradually appeared on the little girl's path of exploration. It was so delicious. The little girl looked at her father with a smile in her big eyes, but she did not have time to talk. Lan Xin was even more so. She ate until some crumbs and vegetable leaves fell on her plate, table, and clothes, but she did not care at all. She buried her head and tore at the crepes for a while. Obviously, Shi and Lan Xin, the two little girls, could not finish half of the Chinese crepe no matter how big their appetites were. There were still some leftovers. Shi lazily lay in the chair and burped. She stuffed the rest of the Chinese crepe to her father so that the food would not be wasted. Lan Xin, on the other hand, was reluctant. Although she ate until her little belly was bulging, Wu Jingjing was worried that her stomach would explode. She advised her not to eat anymore. Lan Xin almost cried. "No, I don't want it." How could she bear to throw away the delicious food? Then take a bag and put it back. If you still want to eat, you can continue to eat, okay? Wu Jingjing had to change her strategy. Next time, if you still want to eat, you can come to Shi's house. Uncle will make it for you. Murphy also helped to coax Lan Xin. The little foodie reluctantly put it down. The excitement of the Sahara Singles Day shopping festival became the focus of major media reports the next day. It even became the headline. It broke 10 million in a little over a minute, 100 million in 25 minutes, and then 500 million in transaction volume was announced at 8 o'clock in the morning. It shocked the world that had not experienced the online shopping craze. In just a few hours, the Sahara Online Mall had sold so many goods. This number, on other online shopping platforms, probably could not reach this amount in a year and a half, right? Not to mention the physical stores. How many shopping malls could have annual sales exceeding 100 million? Of course, this was just the beginning. The next day, the official micro-broadcasting of the Sahara Online Mall announced that the total transaction volume for the day reached 1.93 billion. Almost all the media reported this phenomenal result. If the Sahara Online Mall is listed now, it will probably become another internet company with a market value of 10 billion. Someone was already calculating the impact of the Sahara Online Mall on the Singles Day shopping festival. In fact, the market value of 10 billion was still underestimating the Sahara Online Mall. If an investment bank wanted to invest in Fujun with a market value of 10 billion, Fujun would not even look at it. Moreover, if it was listed, with the power of capital, the Sahara Online Mall could reach a market value of at least 20 billion, and then it could still climb all the way. Of course, the Sahara Online Mall had not reached a bottleneck in its development. Whether it was Fujun, Yang Yi, or Lanzhou Kai, none of them had the idea of going public to earn money. Some powerful media and television stations even invited some economists and internet experts to discuss and analyze the secret of the Sahara Online Mall's success. In particular, many people were eager to know the reason why the Singles Day shopping festival had such a terrifying impact. However, after much analysis, it did not help some online shopping platforms to surpass the Sahara Online Mall. They also wanted to organize a shopping festival, but they were surprised to find that the Singles Day shopping festival had been registered first, and there were no other options for the other days that were related to Singles Day, unless they chose New Year's Day and other holidays to compete with others. There was no other way. In order to not be further away from Sahara, they could only grit their teeth and go forward. However, even so, could a hastily prepared shopping festival be as good as the Sahara online mall? What kind of discounts could their manufacturers give customers to attract customers to leave Sahara and come to their shopping platforms? Now, one by one, they were still catching up, but they did not realize how much the Singles Day shopping festival consumed the purchasing power of the people of the country. For daily necessities like paper towels, they bought half a year's supply at once. Would they continue to buy from other websites in a short period of time? This was just the beginning of the cold winter that the competitors of the Sahara Online Mall had to face. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.